I'd like to call this meeting to order. Before we begin, I'd like to state that we are privileged to meet on the Stalo unceded traditional territory of the Chilliwack, Puyallup, and Samath. I also want to say just a little thing about unceded and what that word means. So in some parts of Canada, we have treaties signed. There are treaties signed between Indigenous people and the Canadian government or the Crown. That's not the case in BC, or most of BC, sorry, and certainly not where we live. So when we talk about unceded, in Chilliwack, the Stalo people were moved off their land and settlers came in and used the land without consent. So I think it's really important when we talk about reconciliation that we acknowledge that truth. So, okay. And then the board also acknowledges the marginalization that many members of our community have experienced, whether as a result of race, sexual orientation and gender identity, or other personal circumstances. The board is committed to providing a working and learning environment that recognizes the inherent dignity of all persons, that is inclusive of all, and that treats everyone with respect. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Trustee Reed, seconded by Trustee Bondar. Are there any comments on the agenda? All right, all those in favor of adopting the agenda as circulated? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes, please? Trustee Swanky, seconded by Trustee Bondar. Are there any errors or omissions in the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as circulated? That's unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Motion carries. Okay, we're moving on to number 2.1, strategic plan presentation, 90-day cycle update. Superintendent.
Thank you. So this is just really a reminder. We, as you know, at the start of last year, we started a 90-day cycle program at our schools and also at the district office. So this will be our third 90-day cycle update in relation to a strategic plan, and Assistant School Superintendent David Manuel will lead us through the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, and we're excited to bring you the third strategic plan update in following the same format that we've done before. There's a number of video clips from folks at Learning Services that are wanting to share some of the work that's happened over the last 90 days, and we've also got some stories from schools listed as well. So I trust some of you have looked at them. We do want to highlight a couple that we want to showcase right now. So we are going to start with the Early Learning Fair. Some of you may have had a chance to be there, and if you didn't, you'll get a flavor of what that was like. It was a real success story around our work with early learning, and District Principal Nicole Driscoll will share that through this video, and then we'll follow that up with another video after. do you want to ask questions or comments at this point, or should we move to the next one? And
I
then
can ask if do any trustees have any questions about this portion? Oh, Trustee Spanky. Oh,
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one, and I had the privilege of attending. I echo everything that was shared. My only question was, is there capacity to expand it to the north side next year, given the success of the event and the fact that it may not have resonated as well with like the north side of the community if they were unable to get to Sardis that day?
Trustee Sankey, can I take that as more of a comment and bring that back to the team? As because I'm not, I think there's probably lots of possibility, but the committee will probably need to look at the possibilities. Yeah. Okay.
I don't see anyone else, so carry on.
So the next one that we're going to just showcase is, and again, many people were part of this, it was a large event, is after 3 years of not hosting the Indigenous Awards, we were able to do it again. And it was a great event. So you'll get a taste of what that was like.
Trustee Bond.
Yeah, that's just such a lovely message from Brenda. I just wanted to share this morning at the Indigenous Advisory Committee meeting. We reviewed or we reflected on that evening a little, and yeah, it was just nice to hear some of those themes being brought forward by Brenda. We all felt it was such a tremendous, successful evening, and so nice to finally have it in person again after having been away for 3 years. It's really nice to see the entire community embracing indigeneity in that way. Thank you.
All right, it looks like it's back to you, Assistant Superintendent.
Yeah, we were just going to feature those two videos for, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That's the end? Okay, perfect. I thought there was maybe more. Okay. All right, so thank you very much. So we're on to 3.1, Audit Working Committee Report. Trustee Moss.
Thank you. So the audit committee met with Tim Halloway and KPMG, and we just basically outlined the process which is going to be used in order to conduct the audit, which will take place this summer. Is there anything else that you would like to add? No? That about covers it. Okay, it was a good meeting, lots of good questions, and KPMG, as always, was great to share. That's it.
Thank you, Trustee Moss. Okay, on to 3.2, Education Policy Advisory.
Apologies, Chair.
Sorry, I did not see you, Trustee.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a quick note. We don't we receive the minutes, we don't approve them, but I did want to note that it should be corrected, as it indicates it was held via Zoom and it was held on the board, at the board office that day. So, thank you.
Thank you, good catch. All right, on to 3.2, Education Policy Advisory Committee report. Trustee Swanky.
Thank you, Chair. My report will be a little bit longer than usual, but I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. The committee continues to meet via Zoom and complete the work of the policy review. This evening, we have minutes from the May 15th and June 5th meetings. Those minutes reflect the recommendations of the committee. However, many of the policies being considered were reviewed over several meetings with feedback going back to staff for further work. At the May 15th meeting, proposed policies 310, 313, and 314 were recommended for consideration by the board. At the June 5th meeting, proposed policy 360 was recommended for consideration, while policy 221 was recommended for amendment, and policy 517 was recommended for repeal. Each of these recommendations can be found under section 5.4 of our approved agenda this evening. As a final comment, I want to thank the committee for their work over the school year. 20 committee meetings have been held between November and June, all at the expense of personal time for members. The committee's work has been to the direct benefit of the board, better informing our considerations and supporting work to be done upstream to make the most of our time at this table. I'd also like to thank the staff supporting the committee, of which there have been many. I'll draw particular attention, of course, to our superintendent and to our administrative assistant, Lisa Champagne, both of whom do much of the work behind the scenes. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Swanky. Are there any questions about the EPAC report? Right, seeing none, we'll move on to 3.3, Student and Family Affordability Fund update. Is this a superintendent or secretary treasurer? Secretary treasurer. Oh, assistant secretary treasurer.
Okay, thank you. Okay, in your package is information report on the Student Family Affordability Fund. As we approach the end of the year, we wanted to give the board an update of how we've managed this fund throughout this year. This is funding that was provided to us from the Ministry of Education and Childcare this year. We received approximately $1.5 million, and we took an approach to allocate this out in a measured way to meet the needs of the most vulnerable in our school communities. So we didn't just, turn around and dole it all out, but you can see in the report to date, we've distributed $1.1 million of these funds. The large majority of these funds have been given to schools to meet their unique needs. So one school's needs may look different from the others and how they've approached meeting those needs. And then also the Indigenous Ed Department has identified families. So you see there's about $870,000 that was given to these groups. To date, when this report was made, $200,000 remains unspent. However, we continue to see spending going beyond that because we're still not to the end of the year. Then also we provided $240,000 to community groups who presented needs where they touch students and families' lives in our district, and we're very happy to have those partners in our district because they're really set up to be in a position to assess need. I would say better than we as a school district, since we have such a plethora of needs and our focus is primarily education. What we've been informed from the ministry is that going into next year, we will be able to carry forward any unspent funds, which is good news because there isn't this pressure to kind of decide how to spend this and whether we're making the most prudent decisions on spending. So these funds, if we were today, it would be just see. It'd be 618,000. I think that number is coming down quite rapidly. We've increased some of the grants. Memiathil received another grant today of $8,000 to continue their work, and then we have a few others coming up. But having said that, the money that will be carried over to next year has a change in focus. It'll be focused primarily on meeting school supplies needs for needy families. And the reason for the change in scope is because the ministry has announced a Feeding Futures program to fund food security indefinitely for the most vulnerable in our district. I believe when I've read the material that they're targeting the 20% most neediest in our school district. So it's not necessarily a program to suddenly feed every student and have a cafeteria program for every student, but it is supposed to be an ongoing program, and more information will come of that as we approach the fall. We're furiously working on a plan right now to submit to the ministry in the summer of what we intend to do with that funding. And just for the record, it's not in this report because it's outside the scope of this. I believe that funding was about 1.8 million, but that's strictly for food. So, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Are there any questions, trustees? Yes, trustees. Go ahead. Sorry, there's like a delay today or something.
No, I'm trying to give other members the opportunity. Appreciate the report. I also, noting that there have been other grants extended while we have flexibility with the funding is appreciated. That was my first question coming into the meeting today. The report indicated that district leadership are going to determine kind of the avenue to deliver support for school supplies in the fall. For parent, guardian, or caregiver aware today that there may be support in the fall, who are they best able to connect with when September rolls around if they believe that the support would be beneficial to them or their family?
Definitely, it's always good for them to connect with their school principal first and foremost. And, you know, we're mindful that we need to get this information out to school principals if we do roll out anything formal, but they should always check with their school principal as a first go.
Trustee Reed?
Yeah, you just indicated that Feeding Futures is kind of out of scope, but I just wanted to ask the question while we're here. Is there considerations for involving local food producers? Is there a focus on that? I noticed in the ministry documents that they kind of did indicate that, so that's part of the plan and it's something that's being considered.
Yeah, I'm getting the nod from the ST because she and our assistant superintendent Manuel are working on a plan. But I believe, yeah, we've looked at the guidelines and they very much want us to use local producers.
Wonderful, thank you.
I have a quick question. So, it's given that it's quite a lot of money left over, hopefully lower than the 600,000, but still, is how narrowly is school supplies defined? Because like, is it just pens and pencils and backpacks and that kind of thing, or is it more broad? Because you know, one of the things I've always had a concern about in the district is lack of equity when it comes to specialized classes that maybe have more expensive supply lists, things like band or woodwork or things like that. And I'm just wondering if there would be an ability to use some of that to allow some of our, economically disadvantaged students to access more programs.
Definitely a good question. I'm actually participating in a ministry meeting later this week, and so I might be able to ask that question. I very much would like to answer that because, you know, it's nice to have a broad enough scope to meet those specific needs. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, trustees? Not seeing anybody. We will move on to 3.4 BCSTA report. I believe that's Trustee Reed.
Yes, thank you. So I have my, sorry, put it up here. So the BCSTA did present to the, sorry, just wouldn't open there. Public consultations on the next provincial budget are underway, and as was noted in the mail out from BCSTA, they did present to the Select Standing Committee on Finance and Government Services. So BCSTA did highlight the need for funding support for inclusive education and funding to offset inflationary cost increases, as well as the need for increased capital funding. So that was highlighted to us. That is an area of advocacy. It was passed at the AGM as well. But the thing I'd like to highlight is that we can still share our thoughts and ideas and priorities on the budget on the website until June 16th, and that link was included in the email as well. So I do want to just make us all aware that we can do that. And then just other than that, highlight the fact that there are more rounds of those trainings being made available by the BCSDA. So things like value-based, evidence-informed decision-making, planning for student success, and financial and resource management. And you can register for those now, but they are going from October to January. That's everything.
Thank you very much. Okay, so 3.5 trustee written reports are in the package, and now we're moving on to public participation. This is comments or questions concerning the agenda. There are 2 public participation periods with an allotted time of 15 minutes. Speakers will be limited to a total of 2 minutes each. The secretary treasurer will put the timer up for me. So please don't identify any people by name, any particular schools, that would be good. And stick to the agenda like I already said, and remember to avoid being disparaging or discriminatory. Thanks. When you're ready, press your right-hand button, say your name and your connection to the district.
Okay, my name is Linda D'Armoni, and I'd like to speak to item 5.3 on the agenda. School Policy 131, Conflict of Interest, states a trustee must never use their position for personal benefit. Terry Westerby wants to bring forward a motion to put a new flagpole to
Sorry,
fly the pride flag for
point
the
of
month
order
of
has
June.
been called.
As a director
Excuse me, point of order has been called. What's your point of order?
This speaker's question is discriminatory towards a member of our board. Point of order.
Sorry, we don't call out individual trustees by name, and it's not a conflict of interest. There's no pecuniary conflict of interest. Sorry, you can speak to your own feelings about pride if you want to, but if you're going to continue to call out one of our individual trustees by name, you'll have to have a seat. So do you want to speak to the idea of having a board pride statement? You're more than welcome to continue.
I would like to ask that.
You'd have to press your button again.
Are there members of this society, of the trustees that are members of the Pride Society? Because it makes them into a conflict of interest to.
Sorry, a point of order has been called.
The speaker is not correct. It is not a conflict of interest when we are talking about a human right.
Thank you.
We are talking about human right. There is not a conflict of interest in a human right.
Sorry, the point of order is upheld. You do not have a point, there's no conflict of interest when you're talking about basic human rights. Thank you very much. You need to put your right-hand button if you want to speak.
Raising flags of special interest groups is a violation of the date of this of the duty of the state of neutrality as in section 15.1 of the Charter of Rights and
Your point
Freedoms
of order
and
has been
upheld
called.
by the
Your point of order
Supreme
has
Court.
been called. Sorry, can you trust me?
Basic human rights include reflection of basic human rights, and I don't feel there isn't a point to what you're saying.
I'm going to uphold the point of order. So gay people and queer people are not a special interest. They're members of our society. Thank you.
Non-governmental and special interest flags create segregation, discrimination, and discontent.
Once again, that was a point of
and
order.
when
You
they
can
are
sit down now,
flown
please. Thank
in
you.
or at government.
Press your button, state your name in relation to the district.
Hi, I'm Katie Bartel. I'm the chair of DPAC, and I'm speaking on behalf of DPAC. I wanted to say that we appreciate the work the district and staff has put in alongside our executive team to come up with the updated DPAC policy, and thanks to EPAC for their contribution and work as well. We're glad to see all our hard work come to fruition through this. DPAC and the district has come to an agreement that is more aligned with the needs of PACs and in Chilliwack and supportive of the good work and advocacy that DPAC does. The district has committed to continuing their funding to PACs through the current funding template, as well as increase the support to DPAC in the amount of $5,000 for the 23-24 school year. To continue to expand our advocacy and communication efforts to all SD33 parents, caregivers, and guardians in line with the district's strat plan. The expectation is that DPAC and the district will continue this collaborative work through the next year and better meet the needs of PACs and all SD33 parents. Thank you to the district staff, and we wanted to let the board know that we, DPAC, support the Policy 221 DPAC update. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Reed Clark. I am currently the first vice president of the Chilliwack Teachers Association. I will be the president of the CTA in a couple of weeks. Just a question about, and I know this is an in-camera meeting, but I just have a question. There was a topic about health and safety violations in an in-camera meeting. Is there any way that the board can elaborate on what those violations were?
I'm sorry, we can't speak to in-camera meetings other than what's in the agenda. If you have a specific question, feel free to email the board and we'll see what, if you want to know specifically, we can see what we can release. Thanks. Okay, press the right hand button, say your name and your relation to the district. Thanks.
My name is Judy Sluice. Tonight, the board is being asked to raise a flag to show support for a specific sexual ideology and persuasion. Will the board also allow other flags in support?
Point of order has been called. Thanks.
Sexuality is a basic human right.
Will the,
Sexuality is a basic human right. We're not here to discuss it or debate it or discuss any reflections of whether that's a human right. It isn't.
Yeah, you can, you're welcome to speak to why you think we should or should not fly the flag, but there'll be no comments about queer people being a special interest, about queer people having a specific ideology, that's not going to be allowed because it goes against our mission, vision, and values in the district. So if you want to talk about why you are specifically against raising this flag, feel free.
will the board also allow other flags in support of other persuasions and beliefs? Our community is full of people with many challenging struggles. Why single out just one group? Does that not create division and discrimination? And why single out and appreciate only a handful of the amazing and hardworking teachers and faculty? Are they not all amazing and hardworking? How does raising one flag foster a greater sense of belonging than our Canadian flag does? Acceptance, inclusion, and equality are already represented in our flag. It also bears consideration that many in our community view the pride flag, the rainbow flag, as a symbol of religious discrimination towards and even a sacrilegious hijacking of the rainbow from its original.
A point of order has been called.
The use of the Canadian flag in this argument is not valid.
Okay, I don't think that's a point of order, actually. Sorry, I'm going to rule against that point of order. Thanks. Carry on, Judy.
Indigenous nations of North America and Aboriginal cultures of Australia have always connected the rainbow to the Creator. In the Judeo-Christian and Islamic communities, the rainbow is a sign of God's promise He will never again destroy the earth by a flood. Other communities, such as Hinduism and Buddhism, the rainbow has always had spiritual significance. Many people in our community see the rainbow flag as a symbol of disrespect toward those with differing religious beliefs, spiritual traditions, and value systems. For them, the rainbow is...
Sorry, your time's up. Thanks.
Well, that's because I got interrupted so many times.
Sorry. Superintendent, can you please speak to, the motion actually doesn't say specifically about raising the pride flag. The motion is to buy a flagpole for special events. Could you speak a little bit to the question that was raised?
I guess the question was around the purpose of the erection of the new flagpole is around flying flags for special occasions across the system. So really quickly, there should be Terry Fox Day flag, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, as well as, I did a quick scan, as well as National Indigenous Peoples Day, Black Lives Matter Day. So the purpose of us looking at a third flagpole is looking at special occasion flags throughout the school year, as determined by the Board of Education and senior management. Thanks.
Thank you. Reed, go ahead.
Hi, Reed Clark, first vice president of the Chilliwack Teachers Association. Question: was former policy 922 flags repealed because there is a Government of BC flag protocol?
Sorry, yes, Superintendent, you can speak to that.
That is correct.
Go ahead. Right hand button.
Hi, I'm Lene, and I have some budget questions. So just two items on the budget, how much they cost and where they actually fall, like under expenses or where they fall. So the first one is security. How much did it cost in February 21st to hire security to search personal property? So how much and where does it fall in the budget? And also a facilitator, how much a facilitator costs, where it falls in the budget. We've had two now, so is it a continuing expense? Maybe. So just how much and where they fall.
Thank you. Secretary Treasurer, do you have those numbers?
I'm not able to answer that without doing some additional research.
If you write down your email address and give it to the superintendent, or if you just email, actually you can just email board@sd33.bc.ca. That's really easy. Someone can get back to you. That's easy.
And
to remember.
when you say facilitator, could you just put a little bit more information, as to what facilitator?
What they do, their job title.
Oh, sorry, you
Yeah,
need
it's-
to unput.
Yeah, sorry. And the other thing I would say is this is probably what's more generally classified as a public records request. So we can follow that process.
Record request. So is that a long process or can that be answered here?
Sorry, you need to push your button.
Yeah, I don't have the ability to answer that question right now. It takes some research to go back into records and find out the answers to those things.
Okay. Are they in the budget though? Like where would these kind of things fall? Like salaries, support.
Sorry, I just need, so that there are people at home watching, so we need to make sure we're pushing the right button. So when you're talking, you need to push the button, and when you're talking.
Okay, if I see my name, I'm talking. Okay. So where does that fall in the budget? Those two things?
Yeah, I know.
There we go, we got it.
Under services and supplies,
Services and supplies?
correct.
Once again, we may be able to give you more detailed information. Email board@sd33.bc.ca. It'll go to all trustees and the superintendent. We'll make sure the secretary treasurer gets it, and any information we're able to provide easily, we can do that. We didn't know that question was coming, so we don't have the number before us right now. All right, press the right-hand button, say your name and your relation to the district.
My name's Alina Kurahashi. I'm a parent of a SD33 student, and also I am here to represent Project AIM. We provide barrier-free access to incontinence and menstrual supplies, mainly around the Fraser Valley, but we've serviced as far as Squamish and Boston Bar, I think. So our question, I'm here to speak to item 5.4.6. I think, provision of menstrual supply. And so we had inquired about, so our mandate is that menstrual supplies are an equality issue. I'm sorry, when you put a mic in front of me, I'm terrible, so please bear with me. So it comes to a menstrual equity issue, and so what we had heard back from I guess the board about putting menstrual products in all of the school bathrooms was that the current policy, or as what's going to happen currently, is that they're going in the girls and non-binary, but not in the boys, and we just wanted to come and emphasize the importance of also having them in the boys' bathrooms, even if it's just a smaller one. I think we in the, I'm speaking.
Yeah, audience, please remain quiet, thanks.
So yeah, that's.
Press your button. Superintendent, can you speak to that item at all?
Is it?
I can provide some context. My button's on. I actually checked with the Minister of Education, as well as I've actually talked to the Minister regarding the ministerial order and other school districts. The intent basically is barrier-free. It's in all female washrooms and unisex washrooms, gender-neutral washrooms, and that is the common practice across districts, as well as the intent. The key piece around this, it has to be barrier-free, and we got to make sure that in every single school that we make available menstrual products to students in that manner. And I think we've done that effectively.
It's, can I speak again? Sorry.
Really quickly, because you were at 1:30 and then the timer ran out, so you've got 30
Sorry. So yeah, I guess. Sorry, I guess so. If we wanted to, I guess, speak to somebody about changing the ministerial order, who would that be?
Presenters, press your button.
You can always write to the ministry at the end of the day, and also the Board of Education, because they're the ones who basically implement policy and give direction to staff in the school district.
Sorry, that would be the education?
As well as the board. As well as the Board of Education.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Sorry, Trustee Bondar, did you? Sorry, you pressed your button.
This one.
Thank you. Yes, I did want to just briefly mention that it has been in some discussions whether or not those products belong in the boys' bathroom. And there has been some discussion about the safety of people going into those spaces looking for those products. So it is something that we have brought to the table for discussion, just to let you know that.
Okay, thank you. Press your button, name and relation to the district.
James, member of the community. Just a question about the flagpole. I think that the superintendent referred to it. What protocol is there for suggesting a special flag to go up? Like, who decides what goes up the flagpole?
Superintendent?
So first of all, if you look at the Office of the Protocol, there are special criteria that if you can have multiple flagpoles at a district site. That's number one. You aren't supposed to have two of the same flags on the same flagpole. That's number two. And then number three, if there's a board motion and the clarity from the Board of Education, that's the direction to district staff. And then we come up with regulations or processes to ensure that we are compliant and that we are consistent with that. And so there's a motion on the table today.
So is there any opportunity for community input on what can go up the flagpole?
Well, we'll probably discuss this more when the motion's on the table, but from my discussions with the superintendent, the idea would be if the motion passes, there would have to be an admin regulation in place. Can you speak to that more, Superintendent?
We could, and I think that requires discussion. At the end of the day, first of all, once the motion is on the table, generally I've seen some other admin procedures out there around protocols, not specific about special events. It's around the number of flagpoles and around protocols around that. And I think that has to be a further discussion with senior staff and members of the Board of Education and possibly an extension to the community. So let's visit that once we have the motion on the table later on.
I think it would be very helpful if there was an opportunity for the community to also have input. As you can tell, everybody's got passion on what should go up the flagpole. So it would be really awesome if everybody had an opportunity to voice their personal beliefs and convictions. Thank you.
Cindy Carpenter, mother of children attending public school in this district. I do have questions regarding Action 5.3 as well, the board support for National Pride Month in Canada. According to the BCSTA, if there were members of the board who were in the society that would put forth the flag, it looks like you might have to get a court order. Will you be going through the necessary steps to obtain a court order, as this is a personal or pecuniary interest?
I can talk, sorry. This isn't a pride flag, would not be the Chilliwack pride flag. The pride flag is an international symbol, so it doesn't belong to anyone in our district. That would not apply. Thanks.
But if you have members of your board that do belong to the Pride Society or a co-founder or a director of marketing, wouldn't that be concerned as a personal of interest?
No, because it's not anything to do with Chilliwack Pride. It's the idea of pride in general, the support for the LGBTQ community in general, but you can definitely hear that when we get to that motion. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, one more person.
Hi, I'm Julie Veer. I'm the chair of Sardis Secondary. I have two kids at Sardis Secondary. One is mine, and the other one, I'm a legal guardian of a Ukrainian girl. I'm listening about, and I'm not sure about which number for that poll, 5 point, what is? I have a question when we say we will talk about it, and I'm tempted to do it in French, but I won't. March is le mois de la francophonie, and it's not attached to me, but there is a program in the school board, and I think we need to show more about the francophonie. You're gonna hear more about me in the next months, because I think we need to show that we offer that program and we're proud of it. So if we can use that poll in March, because that's the one that francophonie would be awesome. So thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion. Okay, I'm not seeing any further people coming up to speak, so with that said, we will move on to action item 5.1, schedule of board meetings amendment.
Thank you, that's my item. So as you can see, there's a motion on the table regarding adding an extra board meeting for this school year, June 27th. The purpose of adding an extra meeting has been, is, as you may recall, we started the work with the board, the policy manual analysis. That's taken a lot of time. And so towards the latter part of this school year, I talked about having an extra meeting, but the date wasn't finalized until later on, until we realized that we have some remaining policies for us to be able to look at, to be able to reaffirm, as well as repeal some of the policies. And that may still not complete the policy manual analysis, but we require that time frame to do that. Thank you.
Are there any questions before I ask for someone to put the motion on the floor? Not seeing any. Can I get someone to make the motion? Trustee Pondar?
I will move that the Board of Education approve the amended 2022-2023 school year Board of Education meetings schedule to include the addition of a regular public meeting on June 27th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Reed, thank you. Trustee Pondar, do you want to speak?
I think we need to have a meeting.
Wait, hold on. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Sounds like we need to have a meeting, and therefore let's have it.
Trustee Moss.
We passed the regular calendar in the last meeting, and a few days ago, less or a week or so ago, it was suggested that we would have another meeting June 27th. I stated that I would not be here and asked that we could have this meeting at a different day that I will be back for. And I don't see any pressing issues that are going to need our attention during the summer. And so I'm going to vote against this. I'm not going to bother making an amendment because I've already asked. But I'm just going to say that I'm disappointed that we're going ahead at this point, and it's too bad that we couldn't have changed the date. Thanks.
Trustee Swanky.
Please, go ahead.
I do empathize with Trustee Moss' position. I think that it is, can be frustrating when you like to come to all the meetings and suddenly there's an extra one scheduled. I just would like to remind trustees that this was mentioned multiple times, that we might have to add a meeting. And I think that, I know some of you are new and you might not realize, but we are expected to do our jobs until June 30th, and then we get our holidays. So going forward, I hope that people keep that in mind when they're scheduling holidays and stuff like that. So thanks. Trustee Moss, do you want to speak?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to speak? Sorry, does anyone else want to speak first? Okay, go ahead, Trustee Moss.
Yeah, I just want to make the point that it's not that I like to come to meetings, it's the fact that it's my job to come to meetings, and as I stated, this is nothing that can't be changed over the summer, but thanks.
Trustee Swanky?
Thank you, Chair. First, I'll just say I have confidence that other members of the board have not prejudged the decision before us. I did just want to ask through the chair to staff if there were any options between now and the 27th that were felt to be suitable, or was the 27th the only option between now and the conclusion of the school calendar?
Superintendent?
I have to go back. I think we did reflect upon the possible dates and given all the different events between now and the end of June, and it is a tight timeline. That's number one. Number two is that preparing the packages required time from staff. And then number three would be, and you're right, just want to provide some clarity. This is more than policy. We also have to be able to approve the capital plan, and so there was a need for another meeting. Thank you.
Yes, Trustee Swanky.
I'll only just add that I speak in favor of the motion, and while I certainly empathize with the member not being able to attend, the capital plan is certainly important and pressing, given that that's a hard deadline for this board.
All right. All those in favor of approving the amended 2022-2023 school year Board of Education meeting schedule to include the addition of a regular public meeting on June 27th? Opposed? Thank you, motion carries. Okay. I am going to do the next item, 5.2, and then we're going to have a quick break after. So just so everyone's prepared that they are getting a break, I'm watching the time, but I think we can get one more item in before we do a little break. So 5.2 is 2023-2024 preliminary budget, second and third reading and adoption. And just before we get to the superintendent talking about this, we can do both second and third reading in one meeting if someone makes a motion to that effect first. So just so you know, for new trustees, you can do 2 readings in one meeting.
Yeah, I don't need to absorb too much board time. I mean, we've been talking about the budget since probably March or April. And we brought the full budget as it stands right now to the board at the last board meeting. You know, as with most budgets, there are things that are changing over time. So we have received a little bit more information from the province, but we'll update that when we do the amended budget in February. So this budget is a good reflection of what we planned for the coming year.
And are there any changes since we had the first reading? Okay, thank you. Would anyone, or are you asking a question?
I could make the motion.
Oh, yeah, can you make the motion that we do second and third reading in?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I move that the Board of Education approve the second and third reading and adoption of the annual budget of the board for the fiscal year 2023-2024 per below.
Sorry, can I just ask Secretary Treasurer, do we need a motion to do second and third reading and then a second motion, or can we do it all as one? We need a motion. Okay, so Trustee Bondar made the motion. Do we have a second? Trustee Swanky? Sorry. Do you want to say anything? Oh, sorry. Any comments about the budget? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving for the second and third reading and adoption of the annual budget of the board for the fiscal year 2023-24 as presented? That's unanimous. Thank you, trustees. We're going to take a 5-minute break. 5 minutes, everybody. We'll reconvene at 6:26.
change has been the increased visibility of 2S LGBTQIA people and straight and cis people realizing that 2S LGBTQIA people are their friends, neighbors, families, teachers, and coworkers. According to the Lesbian, Gay, Straight Education Network's National School Climate Survey, the presence of supporting and affirming teachers, including those who share students' identities, means that 2S LGBTQIA students are more likely to attend school, have higher self-esteem, and achieve better academic outcomes. It remains clear that students in those schools with critical 2S LGBTQIA affirming resources and supports in place do better. I'll read a quote from a local queer teacher and their experiences. They did not feel safe sharing this tonight. I hold my GSA meetings at lunch and have struggled to get any adults to help. Supervision during my GSA meetings is one single EA who has a large area to watch, and when they're away, there is no supervision. The bullies know my GSA days and congregate around my doors to prevent queer kids from walking in. I have tried to get support for my events, but there is no response. This leads to school bullies trying to get in, making faces in the windows with little consequence. And this year when I came out to my class, some parents were so upset that they started an investigation against me. When the Chilliwack School District puts up our message of support of the district website and raises a pride flag each June in recognition of National Pride Month in Canada, we are committed to standing up for the 2S LGBTQIA community and providing our staff with a supportive and safe place to be themselves, be visible, and engage authentically, who then go on to create the welcoming, caring, respectful, safe, healthy, and inclusive learning and working environments that respect diversity, promote equity, and foster a sense of belonging. As acknowledged by Rashida Singh, Minister of Education and Childcare, in the Minister's Statement for Pride in 2023 in K-12 education, we know that each child expresses themselves in their own unique way, and that 2S LGBTQIA students, staff, and families will still face discrimination in our education system. Our hard work continues so that we can ensure every school in this is a place where all students, staff, and families feel safe and like they belong. I urge all trustees to vote in favor of this motion tonight to signal that our schools are a safe place for everyone.
Thank you, Trustee Westerby. Do we have any other trustees who wish to speak? Trustee Reed.
Yeah, so I would, in reviewing the motion on the floor, I went into our school policies, and it's kind of timely that we have 313 safe schools on the floor, and in the existing wording and in the proposed wording, it says the district recognizes that some school members face a unique set of challenges within schools and communities. And one of our district values is equity, and we know that equity means that not everybody needs the same thing. It means that there are people that are at different places in the journey and different access to resources, visibility, rights, and justice. So if we take equity seriously, then we do need to consider the unique circumstances of all students and staff, community members, and I think this is one way that we can do that.
Trustee Bondar?
Yeah, I'm happy to be supporting this motion tonight. I think that much of the excellent information that's been brought forward by my colleagues doesn't bear repeating, but what I will say is that sexuality is a basic human right. Period. The end. If your personal beliefs clash with that, that's your business. It is not ours. This is the school district, and we are open and inclusive here. Thank you.
Trustee Moss?
So just to be clear, this motion is asking the board or staff to show support on the website. That's what we're asking for. And I empathize for any students who struggle in our schools. We have many students who struggle for all different kinds of reasons. I think we have to be mindful of the fact that we serve all the students in this school district. We serve autistic students, we serve dyslexic students, we serve students with mental health issues, with disabilities. And I think if we start down this path, we're going to miss somebody. We're going to leave somebody out. And So I went on the federal, because this is a national directive, the Pride Month. And so we've got Asian Heritage Month, Canadian Jewish Heritage Month, Dutch Heritage Month, International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. We've got National Indigenous History Month, which is also June. We have Italian Heritage Month, Filipino Heritage Month, Portuguese Heritage Month, Hindu Heritage Month. I mean, I could literally keep going on and on and on. My point is, we serve all the students in this school district. And to raise one group up by putting them specifically on our website, unless we're willing to put all these groups on for every single day, month, time for the board to show support. Trouble is, we're gonna leave somebody out. So for those reasons, I'm opposed to this motion. Thank you.
Trustee Prosay?
Yeah, a question on some of the statements you made there. Are they, does not our school have safe practices in our school? I mean, this is a question maybe to you, Ron. Is not our school fairly disciplined in anti-bullying, discrimination, et cetera, et cetera? Like, is this just an isolated case where somebody's not, the attention's not being brought to the principal?
Superintendent, do you want to speak to that?
So I think I get a question. We have practices across all of our schools. If there's any concerns in a classroom, on the field, there are multiple adults that will step in. If there's a conflict, parents have a process and a policy to resolve with it. And I'm going to let you know, in our system, we got a plethora of caring adults. That's what we stand for. Relationships are fundamentally important. Chilliwack, across every single school district. So we continue to support, service every single student and adult in our system and resolve. And I'm going to say this, I mean, bullying does happen. It'd be great to be able to snap our finger, but we will intervene diligently each and every time to ensure we can repair the damage and make sure kids can thrive in our school community. Hope that answers your question.
Oh, can I? You've already spoken once, right?
Oh, right, I was gonna speak next question.
Trustee Swanky, you're the only one who has, and besides me, I was going to speak, but I will defer to you first. Okay, so I'm in favor of this motion. I think it's really important that we're doing it as a statement that we will do this every year so that this doesn't have to come back to the board table, because it should be just a given that the board supports our LGBTQ community, and I don't feel like members of that community should have to go through this process multiple times where we have protesters out by the road protesting their identity. And speaking to a previous point that was made, I personally would be fine with our district website recognizing all the various days and months. I think that would be lovely. But the reality is we have one group in our district that is the target of pretty relentless discrimination from certain people in our community. And I think we see evidence of that outside our board office today. And I think that that's why it's really important.
Point of order, Chair.
To
Point of order, Chair.
Yes, what's your
My point of order is you have absolutely no substantiation for that statement that you just made. It was very derogatory to people who are standing there with Canadian flags. That's all they're doing.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder why they're praying. So anyways, I think that it's, I will uphold your point of order. I will retract my inferencing about what's happening outside from the public record, I suppose. So I just think that it is very important for this board to take a strong stance. And I think that, the community has spoken partly already this year on where they stand on that. I think our community, our partner groups are very strong in their support for this issue. And I think that it's beyond time for us to just say once and for all that this board supports inclusion. And we're not gonna keep debating this anymore. Thanks. Trustee Prosay.
Yeah, so I think that what we have to recognize though is that, I don't think that the community has been like, I don't see it see it. I see that people have different values of sexuality. People have different fence posts of sexuality. People's ideology of sexuality is different. I mean, if you had asked everybody in this room, I'm sure we all have fence posts that define our sexuality a certain way, and we would all be different. And I think that when we start to just take one organization, because it's a prominent one and it's one that maybe has been underground for years and was kind of counterculture at one time, but the idea that we all of a sudden make it a special privilege or a special idea, I think is we have to walk carefully down that road. But I'll speak to it again on on the next point. Thank you.
Trustee Bonder?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to speak to a couple of the things that you brought up, Trustee Per Se, about.
Sorry, Trustee Bonder, we speak through the chair rather
Oh,
than
sorry.
speaking to each other.
Right, sorry. Through you.
Well, sorry, just we don't really do back
Oh,
and
sorry.
forth, so just speak
Okay,
to the
never
motion.
mind. I won't. I think it's important to recognize that while there can be processes in place, it's quite clear that those processes and protocols are not always followed. And I think that the letter that was brought in and read as part of the initial presentation for this moment speaks very strongly to the fact that there are a substantial number of people who do not feel safe, even in their own places of work and education. And so therefore I do think that though there may be policies in place for it, it does matter for us to make this statement very clearly that all students are welcome in our district.
Trustee Reed?
Yeah, so I think that it's really important that we again look at our strat plan and we look at our values as a district. And again, equity doesn't mean that that everybody gets the same solution. I would absolutely support highlighting all the differences in our students, and I think we should, honestly. But there are some students that face challenges because of their identity. It's not just that they're proud to be Italian, like I happen to be. It's that they are persecuted because of their identity, which is something inherent to themselves. And I received threatening messages on social media just today because of my own identity and being proud in that. So it's something that I see, and I think that this is a pretty simple way to follow the values that we have set out in the strategic plan, in our policy, that we are supportive, that we are representative, and that we value equity, and that we listen to the voices of those that are being impacted.
Trustee Swanky?
Thank you, Chair. I'll speak in favor of the motion. This reflects the values of both public education in the province and in our district. I appreciate that the values piece was raised by another member, aligning it directly with Policy 110. I'll draw attention to our strategic plan, which in the human and social component explicitly says we celebrate diversity, we embrace inclusion. Equity and inclusion are foundational to learning and leading and are critical to success, well-being, and fulfillment. This is already the values. I will note that many of the district sites have statements to some effect on them. I think what this does is it hopefully shows a little bit of leadership, certainly affirms that this is a small step that we can take. It maybe supports consistency across the district. I also, when I look at previous decisions by the board, sometimes a decision in this office enables decisions to be more easily made in other buildings and enables people to speak confidently and with a certain degree of pride, which is warranted and upholds the values of the district and of the strategic plan. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, not seeing any, Trustee Moss.
Okay, so through the chair to the superintendent, I have a question. Every time in our strategic plan, in our documentation, in our policies, every time we see the words equity, diversity, and inclusion, who exactly are we referring to? Is it only the LGBTQ community, or is it all the students?
Superintendent?
A collective lens is all students and all staff.
Thank you.
Okay, so Trustee Westerby.
Snuck in there. I just want to appreciate everybody's comments tonight, and I do acknowledge that it would be great to have everybody acknowledged according to the national federal whatever. You know what I mean? And I would actually recommend that trustees do that on their own time. In this case, it is specifically to show, as several members here pointed out, that we already do have a lot of safe policies in place and that we are working hard to continue to make our district a really safe place for everybody, no matter what. But this particular, both the statement and ideally, once we get there, the flagpole, is intended to make a statement that says, we are here for you. We see the struggle you're going through. We recognize it. We hear it every day. And we want you to know that you belong here, that you bringing your authentic self to the school board is extremely important because you, when you're open and you're authentic, you help those students along. And so when students see themselves reflected in their teachers, they feel like they belong. And so we have to show those teachers and the students and their families who are in this district that we're here for them and that we will not let them be pushed down anymore. And I believe that's the reason why we need to make this statement annually. Thank you.
Seeing no further comments, all those in favor that the Board of Education acknowledges and shows support for staff, students, and families in the Chilliwack School District community who identify as 2S LGBTQIA+ by putting a message of support on the district website each June in recognition of National Pride Month in Canada. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, and now we'll move on to the second part of this motion. Trustee Westerby.
Okay, this one will be a little quicker because I read my whole statement already. I motion that the Board of Education direct staff to install a third flagpole at the board office for special event flags. Additionally, when not in use, the flagpole may be used to fly the Chilliwack flag.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Trustee Bondar. Trustee Westerby, do you want to speak to the motion at all?
Yeah, just echoing some of the statements. The flagpole can be used for many different special events, and I do believe that there are protocols in place for that. So I'm excited to have the opportunity to raise many new flags.
Just before we move on, Superintendent, I just wondered if you could speak to, I know the original version of this motion was just to fly the pride flag. So can you explain why this is the version of the motion that came to the table instead to purchase a third flagpole? People might not understand like why that's happening.
Thank you. So the first thing would be is if you go onto the government website and you check out the flag protocol that are displayed, they're really clear that the flags, the flags, especially the Canadian flag and the BC flag, need to have their own flagpole. You can't have multiple flags on a flagpole, and then the next one will be is that you can have a third flagpole, and that you have some level of differentiation. As long as the flags flown together must be of the same size and dimension. That's number one, part of the protocol office. And I did check, and so did Mr. Al Van Tassel. And then number two would be is that this is around celebrating multiple special occasions, as I mentioned prior to, and I think Trustee Marzi mentioned that too. And I think, so the next step would be is we have to come up with a process. I'm mindful that it's really difficult to write an admin procedure to cover all the events. The admin procedure may have process pieces by itself. We need to come up with a different way of making sure we garner feedback to ensure that we have some level of consistency in flying celebration flags throughout the school year. Hope that answers the questions.
Thank you for the additional information. Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Trustee Reed.
Yeah. As a queer woman who grew up in Chilliwack, I could speak to representation from my own experience and how that is valuable and how I didn't have that growing up. But as I was reading the motion, both of them, and I kind of thought it was wise to look to our collective experience as a province, to look to other school districts who have kind of led the way on this. I found that School District 46, Sunshine Coast, they fly the pride flag. They also fly an Every Child Matters flag on September 30th for Truth and Reconciliation Day, and I read testimonies from students on how both of those things are very beneficial to them and their identity. I found it was really cool. So School District 67, Salmon Arm raised the Okanagan Nation Alliance and the Penticton Indian Band flag. So that's a recognition of their partnership. So I see potential here for a lot of unifying factors and a lot of groups maybe that we haven't heard from before. And I have confidence that we're adults and the staff are adults and we have values and we have processes and we can come up with something so that it's not that slippery slope sort of thing where if you allow one, you have to allow everything. I think that we have collective common sense. And then I was reading through our core values, and we have values of inclusion, kindness, equity, and collaboration. And under kindness, it says we demonstrate caring, compassion, and empathy towards everyone in order to create a spirit of connectedness in our community. And I think that speaks directly to raising not only the pride flag, but possibly other ones for truth and reconciliation as well. So that's my thought process and why I'm speaking in favor of this motion.
Trustee Procey.
Yeah, so this is, I wrote this out, I hope this is fair, it's a bit of a coldly objective thought process, and the reason I want to bring this up is because I think it's really important, because we all have our personal experiences and we all have our stories, and I don't want to deny that, and I want to encourage everyone, again, to recognize what I'm saying here, because it's very important that you hear this very clearly. I would like to speak to this motion, not because of the particulars of this motion, but to address what I believe is missing from this motion. In no way do I think the content of this motion is the issue, but I would like to address the precedent that may occur if we accept this motion. Our School Act requires us to be strictly secular and non-sectarian. In the School Act, Part 6, Division 2, Powers and Duties, Section 76(1), under the subtitle Conduct, we read the following. All schools and provincial schools must be conducted on strictly secular and non-sectarian principles. The definition of sectarianism is important for us as a school board, for us as trustees to understand. Now I'm going to read to you a legal definition of sectarianism, so it's not my word, so please don't shut the mic off on me. Sectarianism refers to the strong, identifiable, or adherence to a particular religious, political, or ideological sect or group, often accompanied by intolerance, prejudice, or hostility towards individuals or groups outside of one's own sect. It involves the division of society into factions based on different beliefs or affiliations, leading to conflicts, animosity, and discrimination. Sectarianism is often characterized by us versus them mentality, where members of a particular group view themselves as superior or exclusive compared to others. It is a time-honored tradition in Canada to celebrate many important and commemorative days. Just on the federal level, we have 63 days dedicated to people groups, events, and causes. This is also practiced by our provincial and municipal governments and some school boards. For the school board to engage in every event and organization that request the flag to be flown to celebrate their particular cause or circumstances would be a logistical trap. Who would be included and who would not be included would be a management headache. Our inclusion policy clearly articulates that we embrace and celebrate the uniqueness of each person and strive to create environments where everyone belongs, is welcomed, valued, and supported. The flying of only one flag for only one organization may unintentionally pit different groups against each other. Individuals and communities might feel their specific issues or beliefs are being neglected or overshadowed. We are all shaped by our worldviews, and in a pluralistic society, there are many worldviews. These worldviews are to be acknowledged and considered meaningful. Our role as a board is to maintain a philosophical objectivity on this matter. To conclude, I am not speaking to the particulars or to the agent of this motion. I am urging our school board to maintain an objective position, follow the School Act that gives direction, and maintain an environment where everyone is valued. Thank you.
Trustee Westerby, other trustees haven't had a chance to speak once yet, so I'm going to hold off for a minute. Thank you, Trustee Procey. Can you put your...
Oh, sorry.
Trustee Moss.
Thank you. Well, first I have a question. My question is, how much research has been done on the erecting of an additional flagpole, cost-wise and feasibility in regard to there's trees out there and the whole bit. So what have we done in that regard?
Maybe
Director of Facilities, Alvan Tasso has the information.
Thank you for the question. So currently we have the two flagpoles. One of them is beyond life, and beyond end of life here, it needs to be replaced. You may have seen at times we have to bring in the bucket truck to continually work on it. So we have a plan that was put in place months ago to replace the existing flagpole. At the same time, flagpoles have changed, and we want to have two matching. So we were going to refurbish the second. So our plan months ago was to remove the two. The one unfortunately is going to be salvaged. The other one will be refurbished, and we can use at a school site where they're at another site. So while we're looking at that, the location isn't the best. So again, months ago, working on this, the plan was to add two new poles, and they would be parallel to the sidewalk, more as you come out the entrance, they would be parallel to the sidewalk. So that work was already planned and in place. So at the same time, to add a third flag, had a lot of information. The installation of a third flag, the estimate is $5,000 installed. And that would be the additional cost over top of replacing the two that we had already planned on replacing.
Yes, go ahead. Okay, and so I guess my next issue that I'm going to raise in regarding this is the city has a bylaw that states very clearly that the only flags to be flown in this city are the provincial, municipal, and federal flags. That is their bylaw. And if we go ahead and we raise...
Point of order, that is actually incorrect. Sorry, I don't know if I can...
Yeah, I'm actually going to uphold that point of order. That actually is incorrect. That's on the city's property. That doesn't apply to private property or...
Okay, fine. But it is a bylaw in this city that you may not raise any other flags.
No, sorry,
on public property.
We've already raised. No, sorry, it's on city the city at City Hall. It doesn't apply to anything else. It's just you're just incorrect. So the point of order was called. So I'm ruling on that point of order. So just carry on with a different point.
Thank you. That was actually the reason why rainbow crosswalks were also opposed by the city, was because they have their issue is to not have to stay non-sectarian. And so we do this. We are in defiance of our city, and we want to have better relations with city council. Then I suggest that this is not a route that we want to go down.
Sorry, I want to speak once before you. I just wanted to speak to the idea of sectarianism. There was some information that was brought up that I think is just factually incorrect, so I want to speak to that. So an identity is not a sect or a belief system. If you are Black, that's not a sect. If you are gay, that's not a sect. If you're transgender, that's not a sect. If you're Italian heritage, that's not a sect. That is not the same thing. And I think that there's been a real conflation with some people in the community with thinking that being queer is a belief system. That's not true. It is an identity. You can't help who you're born as. And I think that when we get into that debate where we have one side saying we include everybody, we include all students, and then we have other arguments being made acting like that is a political that being gay is a political statement. That's just not correct. And so I just want to really make that distinction. If we celebrate Pride, we are celebrating the identity of people who live and work and attend our schools. That is who we're celebrating. It is not the same as raising the Liberal Party of Canada flag or something like that. It's just not the same thing. It's very, very different. And I think that the special offense flag thing would be for those kind of things, or for things we can all agree with, like Terry Fox Run or something like that. So it's not, this wouldn't be a slippery slope. It's not true. So that's my statement. I'm in favor of the third flagpole, and not just for Pride, clearly, it was already talked about, for Orange Shirt Day. That was one of the things I raised when we were, looking at the motion the way it originally come through, and when we were like working on it to put into the meeting, I raised that it would be great to have a flagpole for lots and lots of different things to show our support for the community, so, thanks.
I haven't spoken.
Trustee Bondar, yes.
Yeah, just thank you. I just briefly wanted to say thank you for your statement. Secularism and sexuality are completely different concepts. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Westbury, go ahead.
Thank you. And I do echo Trustee Reed's statements in that being lesbian, gay, bisexual, pansexual, transgender is not an ideology, it is an identity. Being LGBTQ is no more a belief system than being disabled or being Italian. I also want to remind all members and all people present in this room that in 2016, the BC Human Rights Code was amended to ensure that gender identity and expression are protected under this code. All schools must comply with the Human Rights Code and demonstrate that they are creating safe, welcoming, and inclusive environments for our students and staff. And also a reminder to all members that almost every school in this district has a rainbow crosswalk. So this is definitely not setting precedent. Thank you.
Trustee Swanky hasn't had a chance to speak yet.
Just before speaking to the motion, may I put a question through the chair to staff?
Of course, yes.
I'm sensitive to the considerations raised about the burden on staff for the considerations of how a third flagpole will be used. Have you been able to determine if there's any examples of administrative regulations or factors that would serve the district well in balancing the competing considerations and maybe just the challenges of operationalizing this direction?
That's a great question. I actually did a quick scan across the system, and thanks a lot for bringing it up. Sunshine Coast has a patriotic and flag protocol. It doesn't talk about special events. That's up to the school district. My assumption would be senior leadership, Board of Education, some level of consultation with the community, but that's internal by itself. It's not reflected in the admin procedures.
May I ask you?
Of course, yes.
And again, I would like to speak to it, but I do want to clarify. Is there capacity on the part of staff to consider feedback from recognized partners in how this is going to be utilized should it be approved by the board today?
That's a great question, and just thinking this through and reflecting upon the feedback received, I think that would be the prudent way aligned with our district values of collaboration.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry, I know everyone's chomping at the bit to talk about.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies. I appreciate and finally speaking to the motion here. I'll speak in favor of it. I want to just draw attention to the language of the motion is to put up a third flagpole. It's not talking explicitly about what we're flying from it. I have no quarrel stating that I would support a flag should it be flown over this building. However, that is not the intent of the motion that is before us. I go back to what I mentioned previously in the strategic plan about we celebrate diversity. I think that guides the superintendent and senior staff in the considerations about how an administrative regulation can be drafted. And I think if we're leaning on our relationships within the community, we can have an informed administrative regulation that supports the responsible use of a third flagpole. And we can continue to learn and reflect on how we celebrate and reflect our community in ways that engage and educate. So again, I speak in favor of it. I do want to encourage my colleagues to be mindful of conflating what they perceive as being the intention of this motion with what is actually stated within the motion itself, because I think we're straying a little bit away from how this motion itself is framed.
Trustee Person.
Yeah, one quick little discussion point. Identity, all these different words that we use to wiggle away from sectarianism. I have some footnotes on sectarianism. I just want to make one clarification just so at least I think my intentions were noble when I was bringing up this process, because I'm fairly objective in my thinking, I presume, but maybe I'm not. But anyways, I really want to just maybe make this comment here, and I did footnote this, is that you can be defined by age, gender, race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, language, social class, ideology, nationality, culture, or belonging to any other part of a particular population. that is part of the definition of sectarianism. Sectarianism actually is quite a lengthy discussion, and it's quite a long discussion, so I just want to clarify that I used the word, I believe, with the idea of us being objective in our thinking, where we did not define everybody by their identity, by their color, but we saw them all as valuable people, period. And I'm just going to close with that remark, so thank you for allowing me to clarify.
All right. Oh, so trustee Moss.
Also keep in mind, now, trustee Swanky has told us that, not to assume that we're going to put a pride flag up, but I think that is obviously the intention here. And so I think, we also need to take into consideration, as we've heard from members who've gotten up and spoken, that the pride flag with the 6 colors is actually an offense to Christians. The Christian flag is 7 colors. This one is 6, and it is considered to be offensive to Christians. So please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor that the Board of Education direct staff to install a 3rd flagpole at the board office for special event flags. Additionally, when not in use, the flagpole may be used to fly the Chilliwack flag. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, trustees. Okay, now we are moving on to policy renovation project. We've got some policies to be reaffirmed, beginning with 5.4.1, Policy 221, District Parents Advisory Council.
Thank you, Board Chair. This is the fun part of all the new policies. So first of all, just a quick bit of a blurb. I do want to, I've sent multiple updates to the Board of Education, and I know that it's been sent in your memo on the weekend. And so today we have several policies to be affirmed and some to be repealed. I want to take the opportunity, as Trustee Swanky talked about, the fact that we've met 20 times, 30 hours of meetings collectively over the last 2 years to roll up our sleeves and to review policies under the purview of EPAC. As per policy 161, no easy task because it takes a lot of due diligence, especially when they're meeting online. So thank you very much for the committee members. Really appreciate it. And you're not off the hook because there'll be more work next year. I want to remind the members of the Board of Education that in the process of affirming or repealing policies, if the question arises, the lots of questions or considerations, then please refer the policy back to staff for consideration. And also, as you deliberate the policies in front of you, reminder of the goal of the policy manual analysis. We started talking that with consultant Ann Cooper. The whole goal is not to duplicate information embedded in the School Act regulations and orders in council, ministerial orders, and also ministry policy websites. And so that's sort of the intent of the work as we go through. So the first policy that we have is Policy 221. And I know that the DPAC president spoke at the last question period. Slight changes there in front of you. We've come up with an agreement, and it just talks about the fact that we have a commitment to provide funding to DPAC based on the business plan that benefits DPAC, as well as just some clarity purposes. We continue to fund, support individual school PACs also. Changes in front of you, and the motion is on the floor to reaffirm Policy 221. Thank you.
Are you asking to make the motion?
Stop carrying with the finger on the DPAC liaison. Okay. I motion that the Board of Education reaffirm Policy 221, District Parents Advisory Council, as presented. This policy was presented to the Education Policy Advisory Committee in its draft form at its June 5, 2023 meeting.
Does anyone want to second that motion? Trustee Westerby, thank you. Trustee Reed, do you want to speak to this motion?
Yeah, I do. So as the DPAC liaison, I brought forward the motion initially to kind of have a look at this policy. I'm very pleased to see where it has gone. I have spoken in with our partners and received affirmation that it is kind of going in the direction that they're confident in. I'm happy to see the spirit of my original motion present in the policy, and that this is a starting point, and that we can go further in supporting the very invaluable work that DPAC does in the community. They're the legislative voice of parents in the district and the representatives of PACs in our schools. So I think it's important, and I really like the policy as written.
Trustee Prosek.
Yeah, I would support this motion. I wouldn't want Katie mad at me. Just the only question I have is how much money? Like you took the money out of it. Like how much money do they get? Do they get nothing now?
Oh, sorry, that's a question too to the superintendent.
The agreement is $5,000 based on a business plan to support the goals of the strategic plan.
Just to follow up on that, so basically it used to say $2,000, so it was capped at $2,000. Now it's going to basically be a conversation going forward. Yeah, and it's more, but it's also not locked in at a specific amount. Trustee Moss.
So I'm going to bring you a little history lesson. I was on the board in 2016 when we originally wrote this policy. DPAC didn't receive any funds from the school district. They only received funds from the collective PACs. So it was the PACs giving money to DPAC to support initiatives or anything that they wanted to put forward. And then DPAC came to us and said, we really want to go to the AGM, but we just haven't got the funds to do it. And there was quite a conversation around the board table at that time regarding PACs supporting DPAC in conjunction with the objectives of all the PACs. Anyways, the motion did pass, which was why $2,000 was awarded, and that was to enable 2 members of DPAC to be able to attend the AGM. So I am also a little troubled by the fact that there is no dollar amount here, and I would like to see a dollar amount here, and then of course we have an accounting for it, as you had mentioned. So this is a problem to not have a dollar amount. So how do we rectify this?
Can you speak to that, Superintendent?
I can. So just off, and I think the key piece is that dollars would remain in an admin procedure or some sort of agreement. It should never be in policy. Policies are the what, and then the regulations come up with the how. And so we had a conversation around embedding the dollar figure in an agreement moving ahead, moving forward. There might be some recommendations further down the road to come up with an admin procedure that embeds the dollar figure.
So can I follow up? So at present, there is no admin regulation directing the board how to give $2,000 to DPAC, obviously. Oh.
Thank you. Right now, what we have is an agreement for next year with ongoing discussions about the dollars and the business plan.
So no admin reg.
No admin procedure as of yet, correct, thank you.
Okay. Trustee Westerby.
Thank you. I again also speak in favor of this motion, as echoed by some of the other members. I know how hard everybody has worked on this to collaborate to get to this point. I know there was a lot of back and forth with the superintendent and the partner groups. I know that parents and DPAC and PAC are an incredibly important partner to our district, and it would be remiss of us not to find ways to support them in their work, especially given that they are all volunteers and they all work really hard on the side of their desk to help us along. So I would urge all members to speak in favor of this, because I appreciate the amount of work that's gone into it and the importance of this funding. Thank you.
Briefly, want to just echo both of your sentiments there. We're lucky to have such a dedicated and hardworking DPAC in our district, as well as just continuously coming up with ideas and being enthusiastic. So thank you.
Okay. All those in favor that the Board of Education adopt Policy 221, District Parent Advisory Council as presented?
One point of order, could we ask to see the admin reg? Could we have that brought to us when that's written with the dollar amount in it?
Yes, certainly.
Yes, we can. It's going to be a conversation with Deepak around what the admin procedure entails. So for the time being, we could easily provide the agreement if that supports you.
Just to clarify, I had called for a vote. All of the hands were up. It looked unanimous, but then you called point of order in the middle, Trustee Moss. So I just don't know if that was a hand in support or if that was okay. Okay, unanimous. Thank you. That motion carries. 5.4.2 is policy 310, student expectations, rights, and responsibilities.
Chair, before we put this on the table, I would like to make 2 changes to it. And so I'd like to, now I can do this any way you like. We can put it on the table and I can amend it, or I can make the changes now.
We would do that,
Okay.
I think, because it's been through EPAC and everything, so we'll make the motion first. Yes.
Thank you, Joe.
No.
Thank you, Chair. So a couple of quick things, and I think you see all the changes in front of you. There was a policy name change from student behavior to student expectations, rights, and responsibilities. There's a link to the safe school policy embedded, and that we had done some extensive work with the safe school policy at EPAC, which needs to be recognized. So there's quite a bit of change by itself. Clear notion around each student must meet the expectations set out in the BC Human Rights Code. There's clarity around schools' codes of conduct and the appeal process at the end of the policy. And then just want to be able to reaffirm, prior to the policy being brought to the Board of Education, the policy was presented to the Indigenous Education Advisory Committee for review and feedback as per our local enhancement agreement language, section 4.4 in all 10 of our local agreements. And we received feedback on May 18th. I know Assistant School Superintendent David Manuel and District Principal Brenda Point were part of that, and they had no concerns with the policy presented, which now is back here to be reaffirmed. Thank you.
So do we have a mover for the motion? Trustee Swanky, seconded by Trustee Westerby. Trustee Swanky, do you want to speak to the motion?
Only briefly, I think the superintendent addressed it nicely. There's been lots of work from EPAC, both on this policy and aligning it with policy 313, which we'll see shortly. My appreciation to staff, I think, for looking at it and ensuring that we're upholding our obligations within the LEAs. I know that was an additional piece of the process, but super important and appreciated that we were able to uphold that. Look forward to the comments from members. Thank you.
Trustee Moss?
Thank you. So I'll start. I have 2 things, one to strike and one to unstrike. So page 2 of the original draft with all of the blue and the red and the underlines on it, if you go to that page. The second last bullet says not be in possession or under the influence, is the part that's stricken, of controlled regulated substance, including drugs and or alcohol and cannabis. So I'm proposing that we unstrike or under the influence.
So that would be a motion to amend the motion to unstrike that. Do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second. Oh, you're going to second?
Are you seconding that?
Yeah, so basically this says you can't be in possession of drugs or alcohol or cannabis coming to school, but you can be under the influence because we've stricken that out. I think it needs to stay there. Reasonably, that is a good statement to make. So that's.
Trustee Swanky, do you want to speak to the amendment?
Sorry, has it been seconded? Is it on the floor?
Yeah, seconded by Trustee.
Thank you. If I may put a question through the chair to staff, if I'm understanding the intention of the proposed amendment, was the intention of the additional and final bullet point not meant to address any instance where a student is under the influence? Okay. In that case, Chair, I will speak against it. I believe that it's addressed in the proposed amendment and in fact adds further clarity to it because it doesn't just talk about being under the influence, but it also addresses other forms of substance use and abuse.
Trustee Prosser?
Yeah, just echoing David or Trustee Swanky. I think it also creates this problem of determining who's, like, sometimes when I go to school, I probably look like I'm under the influence. So I just think it could lead to problematic in the language, so I would strike it.
I would also speak opposed to the amendment. I believe the second bullet clearly outlines that you're not allowed to use alcohol, so that's what under the influence means. So I think it's just redundant to add that line. Does anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? Trustee Westerby? Yeah.
I was going to speak against the amendment. Just echoing what everyone said, it is covered here in a more thorough way. Also, just knowing that some students, they show up, and that's a good thing, and then you get to work with them. So I think that's kind of the built-in of this is that we're capturing students where they're at and leading them to a better place, and I think that is the intent behind the motion, behind the policy.
Okay, all those in favor of the amendment to put the words "or under the influence" back in the motion? Opposed? Okay, the amendment fails. Okay, Trustee Moss, did you have a second amendment?
Yes, I do. So, on the draft, policy 310, 1, 2, 3, the fourth paragraph, which is actually one sentence, is very troubling to me. The Board of Education will take all reasonable steps to prevent retaliation by a person against a student who has made a complaint of a breach of a code of conduct. I move to strike that whole sentence.
Does anyone second that? It's on the floor. You can speak to why you want to strike that.
Thank you. First of all, it's not really clear what it actually means. The other issue that I have with it is it's the Board of Education being all operational in preventing some action that's breaching a code of conduct, and I don't know how the board would do that. So I move to strike that sentence.
Superintendent, can you just speak to that?
The intent, and I'm just going back to our discussion at EPAC, was around the fact that if there was a consideration of complaint, that there will not be any retaliation against that person. And you're right, the way it's written, it's a policy, right? So that's where the Board of Education comes into consideration. I'd become an agent of the Board of Education.
Trustee Prosser?
May I direct through the chair to the Rowan? So in other words, it's like a whistleblower policy?
That's correct, similar in nature.
I would speak against the amendment just because I think that the intent of this is that if someone brings forward a complaint that there's been some breach of code of conduct, we're saying in this policy that we support preventing retaliation. So it's partly under the student rights part of this policy. If a student has said, hey, something's happened to me and it goes against the code of conduct, that we wouldn't have that student be retaliated against by staff, by other students, whatever. I think I think the sentence is clear to me what it meant. I do recognize that the board doesn't go into schools and crack down, but I think it means that in policy, the board's position is that we are anti-retaliation and pro being able to make complaints. So to me, it's not that troubling. So I would encourage the sentence to stand.
So I'll speak one more time.
Well,
to it?
Until I'm just going to check. Does anybody else want to speak to the amendment? Let's do West.
I think in this case, the policy is about mechanisms for people who experience these things to then be able to point to the mechanism within the policy to proceed accordingly. And in this case, this is a pretty specific line about prevention of retaliation, which does seem a little bit odd the way it's placed. I'll address that. But I do think it is an important piece to have in here. I mean, maybe it could have been worded a little bit better, but I do think it covers the intent where there's a mechanism to prevent any form of retaliation and to deal with that accordingly, rather than try to muddle through if that were to happen, where it would fit and what the mechanism would be.
Trustee Reed?
Yeah, I do take the point that it is procedural in nature, but the way that I can look at it is that the Board of Education does sometimes deal with personnel issues. We deal with through the superintendent and staff. So I think that it is a directive and a statement that when we're making the decisions that we have access to and when we're creating policy, we will make sure that this is something that we keep in mind, that we're kind of preventing, taking any steps that are within our power to prevent retaliation against people. And that's why I would speak against it, but I do see the concern.
Trustee Moss, you wanted to make another point?
So we're all interpreting what this means. We're all saying, well, we understand what it means, but it says what it says. And it's not clear. This should not be subject to interpretation. It should say what it says. And this is actually, this is out of bounds for the board to be actually placing itself, as this sentence says. We have an appeals process. If somebody doesn't like something that's happened, there is a whole process, and the last part of the process is an appeal to the board. And that is where the board gets involved. We don't get involved before that. The way that this is written is not going to be understood by, they're not going to have the advantage of having a member of the board interpreting it for them when they read it. So I would encourage you to strike it. And I mean, maybe we can rewrite it, but at the moment, I'm just saying strike it because it's not clear.
All those in favor of amending the policy to strike the sentence, the Board of Education will take all reasonable steps to prevent retaliation by a person against a student who has made a complaint of a breach of a code of conduct. Opposed? Abstained? Okay, so okay, the motion fails. So we're back now to debating the motion as presented. So does anybody wish to speak to the motion as presented? I know Trustee Swanky, I think did you already
I
speak?
moved it, so
okay.
give me a second.
Go ahead.
Certainly, again, I'll speak in favor of it. I think what I would like to actually highlight about this is the board can outline these expectations, these rights, responsibilities of students. I think the key piece in the effectiveness in this policy will be the reporting back from the superintendent and from staff to the board to understand if this is aligning with the expectation that's outlined, in every school setting. And so I look forward to this coming back at that time, revisiting some of that language if there's questions about it. But I think we have a strong policy. There was a lot of work put into it by EPAC. And as was mentioned, it's gone through several steps of vetting, including through the IEAC in addition to our Education Policy Advisory Committee.
Trustee Reed?
I'm really impressed with the changes that are made from an equity and inclusion lens, and I think that even from a trauma-informed practice and reconciliatory lens, it really covers all the bases, and it's really clear that the team that worked on it had a variety of experiences behind it and different intentions, all coming towards a common goal. So I just wanted to speak in favor, but also express admiration for the work that was put into it.
I just wanted to briefly speak to the work of EPAC as well. I'm in favor of this motion, but I also just wanted to say that this is an example of a policy that went through a lot of work at EPAC, because it was so long, and so it came in the first form, which staff had worked on and already put in a lot of time to do edits from the original. Then it went to EPAC. EPAC had some concerns. It went back to staff. I believe it came to EPAC 3 times. So it was a lot of discussion. So, and that's the work that EPAC does. And I just want to really extend my thank you again. I know it's been mentioned multiple times, but EPAC has really been doing a fantastic job. And when we can't agree, it goes back to staff for more revisions. And so we're not, the EPAC has not been just sending policies back to the board because as good enough, they're going back and fixing and making more suggestions. And so thank you for all your hard work. Okay, all those in favor that the Board of Education reaffirm policy 310, student expectations, rights, and responsibilities as presented? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, trustees. Okay, policy number 5.4.3, policy 313, safe schools.
Thank you, Chair. Again, similar in nature, policy 313 was mentioned in the previous policy, and I think our collective effort is to make sure there's alignment in all the policies. Language updated with clear expectations that all persons will not engage in behavior that constitutes discrimination. Worked on this extensively, and so the policy is in front of you to be reaffirmed. Thank you.
Would anybody like to make the motion? Trustee Bond?
I will move that the Board of Education reaffirm policy 313, safe schools, previously 514, safe schools, as presented. This policy was presented to the Education Policy Advisory Committee in its draft form on May 15th, 2023 meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Westerby. Thank you. Trustee Bondar, do you want to speak to the motion?
I do not. I will echo, though, people's sentiments about the excellent work, hard work of EPAC. Someday I'll be on that committee and I will maybe get an idea for how hard it is. But I really, really respect how much work goes into the wordsmithing on these things. Thank you.
Trustee Westerby.
Thank you. I speak in favor of this motion. Building responsible citizenship through inclusivity and equality is a top priority for the Board of Education. This board is committed to creating safe and welcoming environments in which all learners and employees feel respected and valued. The school community should strive to create a culture of respect where everyone feels meaningfully included regardless of their backgrounds or beliefs. Respectful conduct promotes positive relationships between learners, teachers, staff members, and parents and guardians. It enhances communication skills and teaches individuals how to interact with others respectfully, both inside and outside the classroom setting. Therefore, it is important that all members of the school community are committed to maintaining a respectful environment where all individuals are treated with dignity and respect, free from discrimination or harassment. By fostering a positive learning environment where students feel valued and respected, they are more likely to thrive academically and emotionally. The board's commitment to these values aligns with both the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms as well as the British Columbia Human Rights Code. It is through this unwavering commitment that students are able to grow into responsible citizens who value respect, compassion, and empathy towards others. The board recognizes that promoting inclusivity and equality means addressing systemic biases that may exist within our education system. To this end, I encourage trustees to vote in favor of this motion, and it is directly aimed at promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. These policies aim to create a learning environment where every student feels supported in their journey towards personal growth. By fostering an atmosphere of mutual respect, empathy, and kindness towards others, we can help build responsible citizens who are capable of making positive contributions to society. By recognizing each other's differences while celebrating our similarities, we can create an inclusive environment that encourages personal growth for all learners and employees alike. So I encourage all members to vote in favor of this motion. Thank you.
Trustee Moss.
That was a very impassioned little speech you gave there, Trustee Westerby.
Well, Trustee
Very
Moss,
nice.
that's maybe not.
I was complimenting him, okay? So I have an issue with one little section of this policy. If you go to page 1 of the amended policy with the strike-throughs and colors, the last bullet point says, respect those in positions of authority. That's crossed out. And it says, comply with reasonable requests from those in positions of authority. That, to me, if I were a teacher, I would be very disturbed by that, because it essentially removes their authority. And comply with reasonable requests. Who determines what's reasonable? I think, you know, if we put it in parental language, you know, if you say to your child, if you disobey me again, I'm going to use harsher language. I mean, this does not give our teachers the respect and the authority that they deserve in the classroom. So I might make an amendment. I'm going to listen to comments first and see if it's worth doing. Trustee Reed.
When I'm reading through those bullet points and I see comply with reasonable requests, I think of the history, especially in our country, in our education system, of requests that are not reasonable. I think that there are times I teach my children to ask questions always and to be certain that their safety is at the foremost of their mind and at the mind of their caretakers. I do understand what you're saying in regards to respect for those in authority, and I see that the shift in language. I think that the entire document is speaking from a human rights lens. So when it says comply with reasonable requests, I don't think it means I don't want to get out my glue stick. I think it means if a person in a position of authority is asking you to do something that discriminates against you in the context of this document, then the student has the right to absolutely say no, to not comply with that request. So I think it's important within the framing of the motion of the policy itself.
Does anyone else want to speak before I try to go last? That I'm not. Okay, I don't see anyone else. So I wanted to say there should be a capital C on comply in that bullet. It's it's out of agreement with the rest of the list. That's not an amendment. I think that is just a typo. So if that could be fixed, that would be great before it goes on the website. I just wanted to speak to that bullet specifically because that bullet was one of the things that was discussed in EPAC. So it originally said the initial thing that's there, which was respect those in positions of authority. And it was broad consensus on EPAC from all partners. It was unanimously, this policy as brought forward to the board was passed by all members of EPAC. And so it was felt that the original language was a bit outdated in that we don't want students necessarily to feel like they can't question authority in certain situations. So it was the reason it says reasonable requests is that if your teacher is telling you, hey, line up, it's time to go to the gym, or those, yes, of course, the student has an obligation to do those things. But, there could be a situation maybe where it is less reasonable for whatever reason, and then in those cases, the student has recourse. Some of those are lined out here. Some of them are outlined in the students' rights policy. So it was intended, and the discussion at the table at EPAC. Sorry, members of the audience need to not speak while the board meeting is happening. Thank you. So it was understood at that table that that was the distinction. That's why the language was changed. Yes, you need to respect your teachers. You need to do what they ask you, but not just because they're in a position of authority, and not if it's an unreasonable request, basically. So just to give you some context. Trustee Westerby, you've already spoken, so I'm just going to check if anyone else wants. Trustee Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate everything you highlighted from the chair highlighted. Pardon me, from the EPAC committee. The one piece that I would highlight as well, if I go to that second paragraph, it's talking about respectful relationships throughout the whole of the school community. So we're imagining the student and teacher dynamic, and this is intended to be much broader. So it would definitely apply to that relationship, but it is broader in its scope, which aligns with where it fits in the policy book, being students, instruction, and programs. Again, I think there was broad consensus from the committee in this. I highlighted previously the key to the success of this policy is how individual schools take this direction policy and operationalize it. And I think it'll be important for us to think about this and look critically at it. Is there feedback to be considered? I have every confidence staff are going to tell us if this isn't working. However, I do think given the considerations of the committee and given the context that we're working in, where you can't simply say yes and expect everyone around you to simply say yes, that it's important that we honor the input of the committee with this updated language.
Trustee Moss.
So I'm hearing this again, the intention of the statement, and we're assuming that people who weren't at the EPAC committee know what the EPAC committee meant when they said this. And I appreciate the work of the EPAC committee too, just so that there's no question in that. But words are important. That's what we do, we wordsmith. And the buck stops with the board. We appreciate the work that the EPAC committee does, but at the end of the day, these policies are in our policy book, and we approve them. So we have to make sure that they say exactly what we want them to say. This is a safe schools policy. Safe schools. We want students to respect those in positions of authority, especially if they're, somebody who needs to respect people in positions of authority. And there are some kids out there like that. Not to be very loose with our language. We need to specifically tell teachers that they are to be respected by the students. And unless we say it, we don't mean it.
Trustee Western.
Thank you. I do want to point out a few things since I was on the EPAC committee that I recognize some of this work. A couple of things that we intentionally removed through collaboration was trying to assume that we can force people to feel things. So we didn't say we will make sure you're supported, because we can't guarantee that people are going to feel supported magically by all of our initiatives. So we took the time to word this in a way that was like action-based. So we can't force someone to respect teachers, but we can say we expect you to comply with these reasonable requests of these people in authority. Secondly, this this policy actually applies to all persons within our school district. So by saying we expect you to follow positions of authority, we're also saying that to other teachers, and it's a bit of a convoluted process because it's not a chain. It's a team. So those are the two reasons why we took out that comment, if I am correct, in recalling that correctly. And I think it's important to note that we can't force people to respect each other. That's an earned process in which, through this policy, we hope to achieve. But I would like to ask a question to Superintendent, if you could let me know if we plan to create an administrative regulation and procedure from this that would help them interpret what we mean by this, and by them I mean the staff. Thank you.
I think the first step maybe is to be able to garner feedback from all of our PVP around the clarity of the policy by itself. Most of the time it does lend itself to an admin procedure that provides further steps.
Right. All those in favor that the Board of Education approve policy 313, safe schools, as presented? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, trustees. Yes. Another 5-minute break, so till 7:46.
package, but I put it up.
Okay, everybody, I'm gonna call this meeting back to order. We are going to try to get through as much of the rest of this agenda as we can in the time remaining, and then we may table some of it for the following meeting, but we'll see how we can do. So, no discussion, no, just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay, 5.4.4, policy 314, substance abuse.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. So what you have in front of you is policy 314. The key piece maybe would be the information up in the very first paragraph regarding the Tobacco and Vapor Product Control Act, as well as the Cannabis Act and the Controlled Drugs and Substance Act. That was added clearly, defining the laws regarding smoking, the use of vapor products, and the use of cannabis, and the use of controlled substances on school property. This policy talks about the use of controlled substances. The accompanying admin procedure talks about the whole notion of possession of controlled substances, which deals with the operational piece. Over to the members of the Board of Education.
Can I get someone to make the motion? Trustee Bondar.
I will move that the Board of Education reaffirm policy 314, student substance use. Previously is at 500 drugs and alcohol as presented. This policy was presented to the Education Policy Advisory Committee in its draft form at the May 15th, 2023 meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Reed.
Actually, I would like to speak to it. Yeah, I like. I feel like we absolutely need these updates because of the vast development of various vaping and pen-like products that are available to our youth. So I feel this takes those additional products into account while also maintaining a focus on other controlled substances like alcohol that have always been around, and of course nicotine-based cigarettes as well. So yeah, I think it's good work here. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Trustee West.
Sorry, I don't want to drag this out, but I was on the EPAC committee during this, and there was a hearty conversation about it and making sure that it is coming from a lens of reducing harm. So I really appreciate the work that was gone into this, and I look forward to seeing what comes of it.
Thank you, and I was very much joking about no discussion, to be clear. Everyone was a joke. I did just want to say some of the updates were necessary also because cannabis was legalized in Canada, so it becomes a controlled substance rather than an illegal substance, and that was important to update the language and the policy. All right, so all those in favor that the Board of Education reaffirm policy 314, student substance use as presented? That's unanimous. Thank you, trustees. The motion carries. Moving on to policy 360, inclusion.
Thanks, Chair. Just want to let you know this policy, we spent about 3 months. It has gone between extensive consultation. Work on the policy was done at the Inclusive Education Advisory Committee and at the Education Policy Advisory Committee. Process took us about 3 months, and so I'm going to refer it back to the Board of Education for consideration.
Do I have a trustee ready to make the motion? Trustee Western. Yes.
I motion that the Board of Education reaffirm policy 360 inclusion as presented. This policy was presented to the education. Yeah, I don't think I have to read that part.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Trustee Bondar. Trustee Westerby, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes. Sorry. Okay, I swear I'll make this as quick as I can. The Chilliwack School District recognizes that equity is a fundamental principle of inclusion. As such, it has made equity a priority in its commitment to meaningful inclusive practices that ensure equitable access for all students. The district understands that every student is unique and has different needs, abilities, and strengths. Therefore, it strives to create environments where everyone belongs, is welcome, valued, and supported. At the heart of this commitment to inclusion is a celebration of diversity. This district recognizes that every individual has a unique set of experiences, perspectives, and talents that enrich our schools and our communities. By valuing these differences, we create a culture where everyone feels welcome and supported to achieve their goals. In practical terms, this means that our district is committed to ensuring equitable access to education for all students. It means that inclusion is not just an afterthought, but an essential aspect of everything the district does. We recognize that some students may face barriers due to factors such as disability, language, or socioeconomic status. And to address these challenges, this policy will ensure every student has access to a range of supports and accommodations so that every student can thrive. Creating welcoming environments is crucial to supporting every student in the Chilliwack School District. When schools are inclusive, students feel valued and supported, leading to better academic performance and overall well-being. It's essential to encourage students themselves to embrace differences and promote kindness towards others who may have different abilities or backgrounds. Ultimately, creating welcoming environments benefits not just individual students, but our entire community by promoting a culture of inclusivity that supports everyone's success. By celebrating diversity in our schools, we also prepare our students for success in an increasingly globalized world. Exposure to different cultures and ways of thinking fosters empathy and understanding while promoting critical thinking skills. This policy shows that the Chilliwack School District understands that creating inclusive environments requires ongoing effort. With this policy, the district can continue to provide training to teachers and staff on how to create inclusive classrooms in schools where students feel safe and supported. This is why I speak in favor of this motion, and I encourage trustees to vote in favor tonight. Thank you.
Trustee Moss. Okay, maybe this is a friendly amendment that everybody will agree to. Maybe. The third bullet point, actively support, promote, and welcome meaningful collaboration and communication with all district partners and community. Because we left community out of this policy. And community is an important addition to an inclusion. We serve the community, and the community is, as we've seen recently, very generous to our students. And so I think the two words "and community" need to be added to that bullet point.
Superintendent, can I just reminder, when we listed out partners in education in our district, does it include community? Can we just double check that? Sorry, I don't have it memorized. I should have the motto or whatever memorized.
Look back at policy 110.
Yeah.
While the superintendent is doing that, can I just also add that in the first sentence, it says recognizes inclusion as a right and identifies as a core value within our, second sentence. The district is committed to meaningful inclusive practices that ensure equitable access for all people. Our community is included in that.
Yeah, sorry,
Otherwise
my
we-
clarification was just if it already mentions community as a partner in learning, we don't need to mention it again, so that's why I'm looking at policy 110. So I'm sorry.
Sorry, thanks. It just talks about, really, if you look under motto partners in learning, it talks about members of our education community. So by extension,
So don't we have one that lists out student, staff, whatever, as partners?
which is our motto, students, parents, guardians, caregivers, staff, First Nations, community members, and organizations are important members of education community. It's included.
Sorry, Trustee Moss, did you make a motion to include and community?
I actually said maybe it could be a friendly amendment, but maybe it's not friendly.
I think you would need to make the motion.
Okay, so I move that we add "and community" to the third bullet point. That is my motion.
Is there a seconder? Yes, you can. Sorry.
It's just that I suppose a point of privilege. I'm trying to track where the proposed amendment is.
Oh, sorry, yes, so she's moving that we add in the third bullet point with all district partners and community.
And community.
And the
right there.
So there's a motion to add the phrase "and community." Does anyone second that?
Oh, I'll second it so we can talk about it. Oh, sorry.
Okay, there's a seconder, so now the motion's on the floor. Trustee Moss, do you want to, I think you've already spoken to why you wanted that included, because that, does anyone else want to speak to it? Trustee Bondar?
I guess my question is that the bold-faced statement, the board expects the staff, students, and members of the school communities. The community is right there in the boldface at the top. I guess, are you suggesting, I just want to clarify this aspect, are we talking about the school community here, or are we talking about the community as a whole, or are those two separate entities within that one bullet point? Thank you.
Do you want to clarify? Trustee Moss?
I am talking about the greater community that we serve. By extension, we are the community is part of us and need to be mentioned, especially after the generous donations we've just seen at all the awards. Thank you.
Trustee Westerby?
I completely agree that the board should expect and include our community in our inclusion policy. But I just want to clarify that it already is by listing all district partners. As the superintendent clarified just now, all district partners include the community. So it would be like saying ATM machine, it would just be redundant, repeating itself over. Like they already are included, which I agree is a really critical part of this. But by adding it in here, it would just confuse and distract, because the intent is that you're working with us through district partnerships rather than just kind of like on the outside.
I would speak against the amendment for the same reason. That's my only comment. Okay, all those in favor that we amend bullet point number 3 to include the word "and community" after the word "partners"? Opposed? Motion fails. Okay, we're back to discussing the whole motion now as originally presented, or does anyone have anything else to add about this motion?
Thank you, Chair. Very briefly, I'll just, I think there was a lot said about the policy and the value of it. I did just want to note that it aligns quite nicely with our obligations and our goals under the Accessible BC Act and some of the work that's currently undergoing. And I'd also just note within it that includes within it really explicit obligations to our community. So there's no doubt in my mind that it's going to uphold that spirit of collaboration, connection, and just embracing the work as a whole of our community.
Trustee Bond.
Just also wanted to make a mention of the inclusion policy here, including Indigenous perspectives and pedagogies, which I think is also an apt change for this year.
And I just had a really brief comment, which is that there has been some confusion around the word inclusion. That word at one point was sort of used specifically for students with disabilities. Then it also became used for inclusion of marginalized identities. And then it's been sometimes confusing whether a committee is talking about one thing or another. And what I really like about this policy is it includes all of those things very explicitly. So we have accessibility in there, which applies to students with disability. It also has references to marginalization and discrimination and stuff as well. So it kind of is an overall inclusive schools policy, which I think is really important. Trustee Moss?
Well, I'm just going to do something that I never do, and I'm going to speak that I'm going to say that I am opposing this motion because the deal breaker here is that the community is not named as a partner in the school district in this policy. Thank you.
All right, all those in favor that the Board of Education reaffirm policy 360 inclusion as presented? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, trustees. We're on to 5.4.6, policy 433, provision of menstrual products.
Thank you, Board Chair. So really quickly, I had to go back, review of the support services for schools order, enhance the language around the bullet points, and so it's more specifically it talks about the school principal's responsibilities, as well as bullet point number 3 talks about provide for consistent availability and supply of menstrual products in school washrooms, which was a conversation we had at the Board of Education. So it has been enhanced. Also, there is a mechanism to garner feedback on a regular basis. The previous policy talked about staff. This talks about specifically each school principal will garner feedback at the end of the school year to make sure that we have barrier-free access to menstrual products.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I motion that the Board of Education reaffirm Policy 433, provision of menstrual products, as presented.
Seconded by trustee Swanky. Okay, trustee Westerby, do you want to speak to the motion?
I do, and this is my last one. It is important to acknowledge that menstruation, and thereby stigma, affects individuals of all genders, including cisgender girls, trans boys, and non-binary individuals. The stigma surrounding menstruation can lead to exclusion and marginalization, which is why it is essential to reduce the stigma and provide access to menstruation products for all. There's a lack of education and resources that often leads to feelings of shame and isolation, making it difficult for girls, trans boys, and non-binary people to feel comfortable in their own bodies. To combat this, it is important to normalize menstruation for all genders. Creating a safe and inclusive environment in schools involves providing menstrual products to all students who may require them, including trans boys, in a manner that provides them safety, security, and privacy. The Board of Education and province both recognize the importance of menstrual equity and has taken a step towards providing access to menstrual products for all students who may require them. This commitment ensures that every student in the Chilliwack School District can focus on their education without worrying about period poverty or stigma. Promoting gender equality in schools involves creating an inclusive learning environment where every individual feels supported and valued. By providing menstrual products for all genders, it is a crucial step towards achieving this goal. This sends a message that periods are a natural bodily function, and everyone deserves access to the necessary products. Moreover, educating students about menstruation can reduce the stigma surrounding it. Teachers can include discussions about menstrual health in their curriculum, acknowledging that not only girls have periods, but some boys and non-binary people may experience them as well. By reducing the stigma surrounding menstruation and promoting gender equality, schools can create an inclusive learning experience for all students. And I recommend everyone vote in favor of this motion.
Thank you. Trustee Westerby, push your button. Trustee Bond.
Thank you. I would also just like to comment briefly on my shock around the stigma of menstruation. It currently, even in 2023. So I'm really glad that Project AIM and a lot of the work that has been done in our community is out there to educate us, to help us realize that actually there's a lot of students in the district that are losing time from their education because of stress or worry from not having access to these products. And so I remain just very happy that we have stated it very clearly and strongly, and that these products will be available to our students.
Trustee Swanky.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the comments of both my colleagues, and I'll speak in favor of it as well. I will highlight that this moves the policy into the 400 series of our policy book, which is health and safety related. This likely removes it beyond the scope of the Education Policy Advisory Committee. With that in mind, I'm especially appreciative of the final bullet point, which states that it'll incorporate student feedback with respect to the provision of products. I think that's a really key point, and I appreciate staff embedding that within the policy. I'll leave it at that and look forward to further comment.
Trustee Reed.
Yes, if I may ask a question through the chair to staff. The policy as it is amended, this one that we have in front of us, does this allow for products in all bathrooms? We did speak earlier about the ministerial order not specifying that they need to be in male bathrooms. I'm not comfortable with that. I think they should be in all bathrooms, especially for reducing stigma. And I just would like to understand, I know that's procedural, from a policy standpoint, is that what this is reinforcing, or are we going to move forward with how things are going currently? Maybe that's a procedural question.
I can answer the question. This is going to be, so first of all, the whole notion of the policy and the intent of the ministerial order is barrier-free access in all of our schools across the province. And so in Chilliwack, and aligned with the rest of the school districts, I've done a lot of checking and connection also with the Ministry of Education. It is around making sure it's in all of our female washrooms as well as gender-neutral washrooms, and that every single school has a space a student can attend to. So that's the intent by itself. And there was a conversation around having menstrual products in male washrooms and having transgender male feeling safe to be able to access that in a public forum. That's another barrier by itself. And I think what's really going to be beneficial for us will be is at the end of the next school year to garner feedback from all of our schools and then provide that feedback back to the Board of Education for consideration. That could result in some changes. but I think the data will speak for itself.
Okay, I thank you for that clarification. I really am mindful of student feedback, and with that in mind, I do speak in favor of the motion. I just wanted to make sure that that is something that we are looking forward towards doing. Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify, oh, sorry. Yeah, so the policy doesn't say which washrooms, it says barrier free, so we could look at admin regs or look at, based on student feedback, potentially, that where they actually are could potentially change.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. Trustee Prose.
Go ahead.
Sorry, you had your hand.
I just want to ask.
Oh, sorry, Trustee Moss.
So, forgive me for just coming out of the cave, but like, are we really dealing with menstrual product? Like, isn't that just like for women, like that take it out of a like, isn't it just on the wall, and they get it? Like, is it? That's what I'm assuming it is, right? There's just a box of things on the wall that you just grab.
Sorry.
Like, what do you mean by menstrual products? I guess is what I'm asking.
Sorry, can you describe what the boxes look like, Superintendent?
Actually, Mr. Allen.
Sorry, Trustee Prose, but you're.
Make me sound good.
Thank you. So what you would see is, yes, you're correct, a dispensing box, a dispensing mechanism, which is free, and then also napkin collection in the stalls as well.
So would they be like, could they grab a handful? Like, could they grab 10 or 12? Like, could they get enough for like not worrying about it?
The machines are free, and you can collect as many as you like from there until it's exhausted.
Just like toilet paper.
I guess I'm just surprised that's kind of something that is an issue in a school. I kind of think that if it's free, that's kind of cool for the person, but I'm just surprised that we have a huge policy on that. Wouldn't that be just like having toilet paper?
Like toilet paper. Oh, sorry. Very appreciate the feedback, member of the audience, but actually, let's wait till public participation for your comments. Sorry I know you're passionate. So just to clarify, Trustee Prose, this was actually a directive of the provincial government that then we have to have a policy about. You could speak to that a little bit, Superintendent.
Thank you, Trustee Prose. So back in 2019, the Minister of Education and Childcare issued a support services for schools order, and at the bottom of that order, very specific instruction around districts having policies around this, and so multiple districts have policies and also admin procedures, and that's a requirement that helps you.
So, sorry, can I speak to this? Just one quick question, Ron. So can somebody get rid of this policy and just have it administrative?
The recommendation was to have a policy, and so I think the policy stands stronger around making sure we have barrier-free access to menstruation products in schools, and that's the recommendation.
Sorry, just I think it might help inform the conversation. Before we go back to Trustee Westerby, can you just describe what the state was in schools before this came forward? Like what kind of menstrual products were available before this policy came in?
Mr. Alvantasso?
Yeah, so previous to the policy coming forward, there would have been pay machines in the female washrooms and also at the office. So if you could collect them at the washroom with a coin, or you could go into the office and request, and they were given there. So with this policy, they are free and available in the restrooms.
Does anyone else want to speak to this before Trustee Westerby has already spoken? Okay, Trustee Westerby.
I actually have a question to Superintendent. Why is the procedure embedded in this policy? Because typically the procedure is separate from the policy, and we would have an administrative procedure that reflects the policy but not embedded. So if you could just speak to that, please.
You could. There's multiple ways. In some instances, it's easier to have a policy with a very short notion of the admin procedure embedded within it. There's no sort of specific direction. This particular ministerial order made it super easy. And when I did a scan across multiple systems, many just had a policy only. Again, because of the importance of the ministerial order.
If I may, it is important that student feedback mechanisms are there, but some basic tenets should just be automatically met, like access to all genders, all washrooms. It already says here that to ensure menstrual products are made available to all students of all gender identities in a manner that protects their privacy. So by expecting a trans boy to use a gender neutral washroom, it eliminates that privacy. It automatically gives them a flag. So in and of itself, by not ensuring that we are having them in the boys' washrooms as a set plan right now, we are automatically now defeating the motion by not having that. And by waiting for a trans boy to say, I need this, is again giving them an extra barrier to say that they need it when it should be automatic. And worst case scenario, cis boys have access to menstrual products that they no longer feel like they don't have that stigma to it, like, you know, their parents believe, their siblings believe, like it's a natural thing that everyone should know about, so that I don't see any reason why we don't have them in the boys' washroom.
I think that was more just a statement.
Yeah. So I mean,
Okay.
I'll take it a little bit further and say, if this doesn't automatically include male washrooms, I would like to either make a motion to, I know this is kind of an option, but I would either like to make a motion to amend or recommend that this go to EPAC for further development.
Just to clarify, the current policy doesn't say, it just says barrier free. So the actual way it's implemented would be a separate discussion that I think maybe we can carry on as a board and possibly get more feedback from students and stuff. This motion, I don't believe needs to be amended because it just says barrier free. So it doesn't actually currently say that they're not in the boys' washroom in policy. If you understand. Does that make sense? Superintendent?
Thank you. Thanks for the question. The policy is in compliance with the ministerial order. And just then, just to add some other information, I did a scan across multiple school districts. I did ask questions. I scanned their policies. And so it is consistent with the intention of the ministerial order. Now, having said all of that, we're going to collect some information from students from Chilliwack. And if the information provides us that we need to continue and look at all spaces, that's a different story for next year. That becomes an operational piece. We'll bring back information. And I think part of the policy manual analysis is that the board gets regular information at the end of the school year to ask the question, are the policies basically are being implemented with the intentionality.
Do you have a motion or do you?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to motion to amend. I don't feel comfortable that this is going to actually provide equitable access to all students, so I'd like to amend point the ensure menstrual products are made available to students of all gender identities or expressions in a manner that protects student privacy, specifically all variations of washrooms and in brackets male, female, and gender neutral.
Okay, so is it possible, could I rephrase what I think your amendment is in a shorter way that I think would be clearer for people? So I think it would just be made available to students of all gender identities or expressions in all washrooms.
Well, that's the part of the issue with all washrooms is that it doesn't have to be in every single washroom in the school. So by saying all washrooms, I worry that interpretation would be every single washroom, which is not the case. It's more that there's at least one male washroom with access to free menstrual products.
Okay, so I am fine with entertaining your amendment, but could you just type it out exactly the way you said it so that Talena can put it on the screen and just email it to her? Yeah, thanks.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Thank you. So in one of our budget committee meetings, we heard about a lot of vandalism in the washrooms in the middle schools and the high schools. Were menstrual products part of the vandalism that we heard about?
Trustee Westerby, were you sending her the? Did you
I'm
do it
going to
already?
say yes. Mr. Van Tassel, you also have information.
Yes, we did see the machines, the product being misused.
Okay, do we have the amendment on the screen? Are we able to do that?
Since we're doing it, staff just sharing the screen, I emailed the amendment to your signature. Or is that complicated?
Chairman.
Just
Yes,
go
there.
off the screen.
Well, sorry, it hasn't been seconded, it's been made.
If I could just procedural matters.
Yes, yes, you can.
Thank you, Chair. Just while we're in this moment here, I'd like to move that we table items 5.5.1 through 5.5.5 and 5.5.7 to the next meeting of the Board of Education. If there's a seconder, I'll briefly explain why I've left one item.
Okay. Second by trustee Bondar.
Thank you. And I'll just clarify, I did leave 5.5.6 in there just to close off the reporting from EPAC received earlier in this meeting.
Did you also leave, are you not wanting to table 5.5.7 either, or did I just?
No.
Yeah.
That was
Oh, so it's
included within the
only
motion.
5.5.6 that you're leaving out of that?
Correct.
Okay, so the motion on the table, we're just, sorry, this is kind of funny, but we're just doing it because there was a delay. So we're moving to table all of the things under the policies to be repealed except 5.5.6 until the next meeting. It's been seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of tabling those the repeal of those policies to the next meeting? Opposed? Okay, that carries. So
May I make a second motion, Chair?
yes, you can.
I would move that the board extend the meeting until the end of our approved agenda. I'll speak very briefly if it's seconded.
Is there a seconder for that? Trustee Singh?
Board Bylaw 5 allows for 3 hours for our meetings. A motion of the board may extend it beyond that time to complete the business. That's the intention of the motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of extending the meeting past 8:30 until the conclusion of business? Opposed? One abstention. Okay, thank you very much, trustees. Okay, so just so you know, so what's happened is all of the things under 5.5 have now been struck except for 5.5.6. We're going to keep discussing provision of menstrual products until that's done. Has been a motion made, which is now on the screen, which is to amend the policy as presented, and if we have a seconder, we will discuss the amendment. Seconded by trustee Reed. Okay, trustee Westerby, speak to your motion.
Yes, I just wanted to be very explicit and clear that all students should have access to these menstrual products in a manner that protects their privacy, and I wanted to be explicit that it includes all variations of genders, and not that they could use a separate bathroom to somehow flag themselves as being different in any way, and that they should be able to just consistently use the washrooms in which they're safe and which they're used to, and be able to have access to what they need, just like toilet paper. Thank you.
Trustee Reed?
I would like to speak in favor of the amendment. I do understand the original intention of the policy as written, but we do have some procedural items in here to give us guidance because we are blazing new trails on this path. And I think it is important to call this out. I don't think that we want to meet the bare minimum of ministerial orders or what other districts are doing. I think that we have a pretty clear mandate here to do what we think is safest for students. And I think we're well on our pathway to do that. And I appreciate the amendment.
Trustee Prose?
I oppose the amendment strictly for two reasons. The first one is that we already have barrier-free or barrier-free access bathrooms. I think if you're going to put them in male washrooms, they will cost you a lot of money. They will get vandalized. They will be destroyed. That's just how boys are. And so I just want to caution you to, for the sake of political expediency, if I can say that word, like, let's be fairly practical about it too from an economic point of view. I would very be cautious to put them in male bathrooms. I think you're better off to put them in barrier-free bathrooms and be done with it. They're easy enough to find, I presume.
Sorry, this is just because there's some spacing that's weird now. There's a 4 that shouldn't be there, I think. Can we just get rid of that? And then, if you can't, like, it's fine, but there's 5 points, not 4, right? Or 6, right? And then, before specifically, it should be a comma, not a semicolon. I'm just proofreading. Sorry. I'm really torn on this because I really support the reason this amendment was made. I have concerns. I have concerns about vandalism, frankly. Although maybe that would stop once it just becomes very normalized. So that's, I think, very much a possibility. The other thing is I'm a little bit concerned about safety of accessing those products in a boys' washroom, which might be more stigmatizing than going to a gender neutral. I'm just a little bit concerned. So the original way that this policy was written was about barrier-free access, and then we have a mechanism about student feedback. So in some ways, I almost would prefer to wait for the student feedback, but on the other hand, I support this. So I'm torn, just thinking out loud, because I didn't have time to think about this before the meeting. So I would like other people to speak to it, but those are my thoughts. I support the idea. I do recognize that in an ideal world, it would just be in the bathroom, like toilet papers in the bathroom. But then I do have some, with a new thing like this, I have some fears about just a big waste of products, honestly. And then also possibly some, with like trans boys in the washroom suddenly getting a pad. That's very much outing him in a way that is different than if he could discreetly go into a gender neutral washroom. So I'm a little torn. Trustee Westerby, you've already spoken to your motion. Trustee Swanky?
Thank you, Chair. For myself personally, I came prepared to consider the merits of proposed policy and some changes within it. And the amendment proposes that the board consider some of the operational implementation of it. So with that in mind and not feeling fully prepared for maybe an informed consideration of this, I'd like to move that we table it to the next meeting, perhaps with the consideration that staff have the ability to put forward any considerations about the expanded scope that the proposed change to policy could make. I would move that we table it till the June 27th meeting.
So Trustee Spanky is moving to table the whole policy, including all the amendments and everything made till the next meeting. So is there just as the discussion, it just stops? Yeah,
So the
exactly.
amendment is on the floor.
Yeah.
We pick it up as is.
So Trustee Spanky is moving to table till the next meeting. Do we have a seconder for that idea? Trustee Bondar seconded. Does anybody want to speak to the motion to table? Westerby.
How much work do we have to do at the next meeting, as it's just going to drag out the next one?
Yeah, sorry. That I don't think we should worry too much about. If we have to bring policies into September, it's not the end of the world. I also think that there might be an opportunity to make one motion to repeal a whole bunch of policies at once, and then everyone read their package and make sure you come. And then if there's one that you really want pulled out because you love it and want to retain it, we could do that. I think it's not necessarily necessary to debate every single repealed policy, some of which are pretty straightforward. So I think there's ways to maybe streamline the next meeting. So don't let that weigh down on you. It's more if you think this can be discussed tonight or needs to be tabled.
I just want to speak in favor of tabling it. It's been a very long meeting, and this would give members a chance to consider this amendment and come back with some more information to move forward. So.
Okay, all those in favor of tabling the discussion of policy 433 provisional of menstrual products to the June 27th meeting? Opposed? Okay, motion carries. One opposed, one abstention. Okay, then we are moving down to what was formerly 5.5.6. I guess it still is, but there's a lot of striking. Policy 517, health promoting schools. This is policy to be repealed.
Thanks, Chair. This was referred back to the Educational Policy Advisory Committee, I believe, March 14th, at the March 14th public meeting. Had actually provided a draft framework, great discussion at EPAC, and it was a recommendation to repeal this policy and send it back to the Board of Education based on the intent of the policy. Thank you.
Does anyone want to make the motion to repeal this policy? Trustee Swanky?
Sure, I would move that the Board of Education repeal policy 416. I beg my pardon.
Don't randomly repeal policies.
That the Board of Education repeal policy 517, health promoting schools.
Is there a seconder? Trustee Bondar. Trustee Swank, do you want to speak to the motion?
Very briefly, I do want to honor the fact that at the May 9th board meeting, the board did refer this to EPAC. EPAC did have a lot of thoughtful feedback on the proposed, I think, new direction of the policy. What ultimately came as a result of it was a discussion that was grounded in that's very likely new direction, not intended from the policy, which would have embedded itself in the health and safety portion of the policy book, not something that's related to students, programs, and instruction, likely in the 300 series or the 200 series related to our community. I do want to note that if there is, this may be a conversation that comes back, that process would be rooted in policy 150 related to policy development, review, and revision. With that in mind, I know there may be members that object to this. It was the consensus of the committee that repeal was the best path forward for the board, and that we can uphold these values either through new policy or through the work of staff that currently operationalize the values articulated in the current policy.
Oh, Trustee Westerby.
Thank you. I was one of the trustees who voted in favor of returning this to EPAC, and I was also on the EPAC committee during this conversation. And what was presented as the amended policy didn't really echo what I thought this policy was intended upon. And upon further discussion with the rest of the committee, it was sort of decided that it made more sense for the intentions of my putting this back to EPAC would actually be a different policy, which would be about wellness and inclusion of different cultural practices in wellness. So that's why I also recommended to bring this back for repeal, because upon communication with the community, it was discovered that it actually is not a current, the policy holds no currency as it currently sits, even with reworking it. And so I would vote in favor of repeal.
I just wanted to briefly echo some of what's already been said, but just the policy as it had been written was very, very brief and kind of meaningless a little bit, but there was a feeling on the board by some members that the idea of promoting health in school is important. So then staff went back and really wrote up a thing about healthy schools, but then that was kind of just stuff that's already done or already stated in School Act or in our other policies. So we ended up with a policy that was not adding value. And the question was posed to staff if the new policy that had been drafted would change anything that happened in school. And the answer was no. It would not provide any new direction. So then it was felt by EPAC that that was probably not a policy that was worth having. There was some interesting discussion about the idea of wellness and different ways of looking at wellness, but that was so far removed from the original policy that this was supposed to be replacing that it really was a new idea. And the thought was that if the board wanted to do that, I would need to provide some sort of direction, like clear direction about what that kind of policy was supposed to be. So that's why it's been recommended for repeal, and I do support the repeal of this policy because I don't think either version, the one we saw last time or the one that we tried to look at, really adds value. Trustee Moss.
So I recall the conversation that the board had, and I was the one who recommended we send it back to EPAC. See, we have 3 trustees on that committee, right? And so, but we had the conversation. I didn't see any of the conversation that we had at the board table reflected in any of the rewrite, because we talked about the fact that we live in a farming community, and we wanted to promote healthy eating through community, as well as discouraging unhealthy drinks. And so I'm disappointed that that the committee recommended that we repeal it when it was already here for repeal, and we sent it back for consideration. So there we are.
I just want to clarify. Oh, sorry.
Trustee Westerby.
I just want to clarify that we did ensure that we communicated the reason why the board sent it back to EPAC. I don't know why that wasn't reflected in the minutes, but I do want to clarify that we did mention sort of the different trustees' beliefs, but overall the board's intention behind this. So, but what ultimately was put in here, it's already reflected in all these other policies that we have in our policy manual. So we just found this one to be redundant and there wasn't a way for us to really capture it as it is, which is why we thought a new policy that promoted that and captured that concepts would be introduced later on.
And through the chair, I appreciate your clarification on that. But the board has the last word. All because the committee recommends we do something doesn't mean that we have to do it. We do have the last word. I think I've said that already tonight. And so just to remember that the policy book belongs to the board. That's why we do what we do. That's why we're a governance board. That's why we run for election. We appreciate the work of the EPAC committee. However, the buck does stop here. And so, yeah, I'm disappointed that that's the route that this has gone.
Okay, all those in favor that the Board of Education repeal policy 517, health promoting schools? Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much, everybody. So we're moving on to public participation. So 15 minutes for public participation, same rules as last time, and come to the mic if you're ready to speak. Press the right-hand button, identify yourself.
Hello, my name is Jamie Vieira, and I am both a parent and a staff member in Chilliwack School District. I am a teacher in elementary school, and I would like to speak to policy 433, the menstrual products. I am an elementary school teacher, and we do not have barrier-free menstrual products in our elementary school or several of the schools that I have worked on. We have had to search for menstrual products for several students this school year. So I'm wondering if the board, I have reassurance from the board that elementary schools are also going to be included in this policy, and looking for some kind of timeline for when we could. We have the boxes, but they are still and they're empty.
Superintendent, can you speak to that? I was not aware that that was.
I do. So, and I know as I brought this up, Mr. Van Tassel talks about all elementary schools will get in the dispensers this September. Am I not correct?
Yes, that is correct, Superintendent.
Thank you very much for that reassurance. My students are looking forward to this. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's just to add some connect. It's been a stage piece. So we first started with the high schools, and then our middle schools. And again, this is on the making sure we get the product, and then the next process is going to be the elementary schools. Thanks.
I need to interrupt for a minute just to say, I think that it is a really good point because a lot of kids get their period in grade 3 or 4 now. So it is important to have them in elementary school. Go ahead.
So, Alina Karahashi, I'm a parent with SD33 and also with Project AIM. I just wanted to come back up here and I can answer some of your questions. So, Trustee Prose, you asked about product loss or vandalism. What we have found from studying the data of other barrier-free menstrual product dispensing programs is that the general product loss initially tends to be around 30%, and that is across all genders, not just girls or not just, and also that vandalism, that number tends to taper down very dramatically around the 3-month mark. However, one of the things that seems to affect how quickly the vandalism goes down is how, I guess, quickly the population being served can escape the scarcity mentality as far as that resource. So it really comes down to the decisiveness by the provider, right? So if it's there one day and it's not, and you take it away and you bring it back again, then people are going to be not sure if it's always going to be there, and they are reassured of that, then the vandalism will go down So for Project AIM, if people want to take what they need home, we're okay with that because obviously they're doing it because nobody's getting rich black market selling menstrual products, right? So they cost a lot at the store, but I'm not becoming a menstrual magnate tomorrow. So, right, and I understand that, like, as a school board, you have budgetary considerations that we don't, or, well, I mean, we're on a shoestring budget already, so.
Alina, I'm so sorry, but your time is up.
Yes.
I just wanted to point out, we do have a delegation request process. If you email the secretary treasurer, I think Project A might be something that the board would be quite interested to hear about.
Okay.
So you can do a 10-minute presentation
Absolutely, and
potentially.
we can answer a lot of the questions that were
I think probably
today, so.
people would have a lot of, but you know, to be fair to other members of the audience.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much.
Hi, James again. Just referring to policy 360, the inclusion that says the board expects that all staff, students, and members of school communities will ensure that all our work reflects Indigenous perspectives, knowledge, and pedagogies. What does that mean? How does that work itself out?
Superintendent, do you want to speak to that?
This is the school superintendent.
So I can start by looking at within our education context. Our curriculum now reflects Indigenous education. So K to 12, our curriculum has language, has content, has competencies that are aligned with First Peoples principles. In addition to that, I think the work of truth and reconciliation, the calls to action, that statement acknowledges that we're going to continue that at all levels within all parts of our school district.
And maybe just to add one more, that our early learning, so our early learning framework from the ministry, also the guiding principles is our First Peoples principles of learning. So it's embedded.
Okay, does that also include religious perspectives?
Sorry, what do you mean by that? Sorry, push the button.
Sorry. Teaching of First Nations religious ceremonies, beliefs, does it include that as well?
I think maybe what you're speaking of is like an appreciation of culture, and we have to be very mindful that we don't appropriate that, but we have to appreciate the cultures and learn about cultures just like we learn about many cultures in our school systems, right?
Got the button, Lene. So I'm wondering about the website, that you're going to put a message of support on the district website each June in recognition of National Pride Month in Canada. So does that mean that you won't, like, what does that mean? Because for like 2 weeks now, the website already has had, this is Pride Month. So did they somebody put that on the website before it was approved?
Superintendent, can you speak to that?
I do, so I think the message. Thank you. The message you're referring to was a message that was sent out by the Minister of Education and Childcare at the start of the month. This will be another message that goes beneath the banner that was approved this evening.
So it's something in addition to, like it already has, this is Pride Month on our website. So there's something more, like what is that message gonna be? Like that kind of seems like support to me.
So what was passed tonight was that there would be specifically a message of support from the Board of Education. What was on the website wasn't a message from the Board of Education. It was just a message from the Ministry of Education. So every month in June, as per the policy, or the motion that was passed, there will be a personalized message from the Board of Education expressing support for members of the LGBTQ community.
So, can I ask another one? I have 23 seconds. This list here, of all the community partners, is that money that these communities have given? Like, is that money that the government gave to, I can't find it, to the communities, to Bowls of Hope and that? Is that money Bowls of Hope gave, or is that money the ministry gave to Bowls of Hope to manage the money?
That's a good question. So, just that was, we got money. The assistant secretary treasurer can explain that, but there was money given by the district, and then the district gave some of that money to community organizations. Can you speak to that one more time?
So very quickly, these organizations approached us. Well, we reached out and said, are there initiatives that you can undertake under this mandate that the ministry has given us for supporting families? And then they came back with proposals. We met as a executive leadership team to approve these things, and so we handed over the money in a form of a grant, and then they spent it and reported back to us on what they did with it in line with their initial proposal.
And just to clarify, those are all organizations that already serve students specifically in our community. They're not, it's not just like random money to random community organizations.
Reed Clark, Vice President of the CTA. Also encourage everyone to look at the BC curriculum and stuff. There's lots there about indigenizing curriculum and the work that teachers do every day. I'm here to speak on the agenda item regarding showing support for Pride Month. Ironically, today I'm not wearing my Pride shirt, but I typically come to these board meetings with it on. I wear Pride so the families in our schools and community know they are safe. That the students I teach, that we support, know that teachers care and support them. We teachers, support Pride because some people make them hide. As some of my colleagues in the labor movement have stated, Pride was born as an act of protest led by Black and Latina trans women. It was sparked in defiance of persecution and an expression of both individual courage and community strength. It is a time to celebrate the 2S LGBTQIA+ members of our community, reflect on the history of queer struggle and liberation, and renew our solidarity. For Pride, solidarity and celebration have always gone hand in hand. They are just as important today as they were in the days of Stonewall. Well-organized voices of hate are spurring acts of violence and intimidation around the world, and in British Columbia is no exception to this. May you never know the fear of having your human rights challenged by a group of school trustees or by a politician every time there's an election. Most importantly, may you never know the pain of watching your loved ones suffer because those in power voted against your right to exist fully, equally, and authentically. Teachers within our whole federation will always defend the safety and inclusion of 2S TQIA+ teachers, students, and families in our school communities.
Thank you.
Hi, Julie Veer, Chair of the PAC of Sardis Secondary. I have a sticker here. Kindness, less judgment. For me, that's pride. And it's my motto. It's been kind to everybody. It's not about what you do in your house. I don't care. For me, it's to be kind to everybody, no matter what.
Hello, my name's Tabitha and I'm a parent and a volunteer in the district. And I just have a quick question. I've been attending the meetings this year just to see from the inside of the board perspective. But tonight I'm hearing of a teacher who's saying that they don't feel safe in your schools. So as someone who's been attending the meetings, it seems like every meeting we are talking about providing a safe space. So where is it going wrong that the teachers are not safe? If we are working hard to create an atmosphere for everyone, why are the teachers the very core fundamental
ones in your schools who are changing everything for the students and the staff, why are they coming forward and saying they still don't feel safe? So as someone who is in the district, that just concerns me because I feel like it's getting more disunified and more broken. And the very ones who we are changing and adapting and going forward for are still feeling unsafe. So as a parent, volunteer, and community, how are we going to make sure that things are not getting worse instead of better?
Thank you for the question. I guess that really is a question to the board. I can't really, because we haven't discussed it as a board, speak to it fully for the board, but I will just say as a personal statement, I think I can predict what we would say if we could discuss about this, but I think there has been a challenge with the board not allowing people to feel that they have, the example that was given was specifically a teacher who has a GSA and is supporting queer students, and I think that there has been some lack of direction from the board in that regard. And I think that part of the point of tonight's motion was to make it very, very clear that the board stands for inclusion. And I think that we've tried to do that before, and I think we're doing it again. And I think that it starts at the top. And I think that if we can keep reinforcing that, it'll more and more over time make people safe to support their students and support everybody in schools. Superintendent, did you want to add in?
I'd concur with that statement. At the end of the day, as governors, you have to make some bold statements for the school district. That's supposed to work that we do as educators in our system. And that starts to create that inclusive culture collectively. And I know that, if I want to quote Dr. Michael Fullan, if kids are well, then they begin to thrive, and that is connected back to the academic achievement too. So how do we create spaces where every single student and staff member can thrive in our system?
All right, not seeing anyone else coming to the mic, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.